across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The paramedics are removing Julia from the studio as we... Yep, you're right, love. As we speak. She'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock right here on Talk. Lots to get through this afternoon, of course. Labour admitting no Channel migrants have been returned to France under its one-in, one-out policy. This was Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, of course, delivering this yesterday. She promises tighter family reunion rules, accelerated closure of asylum hotels. Can Labour finally deliver? Your response, I think I know what your response might be, but we'll give it a good go. Lines are open now. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer insists he will lead Labour into the next election after that reset in his Downing Street team, bringing in a string of experienced economists in a move that apparently threatens to sideline the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Boomerang Rach was not happy. And this is disturbing. Father Ted creator Graeme Linehan has been arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow over a series of anti-trans tweets claiming he was treated like a terrorist as soon as he stepped off the plane. What the heck is going on? We'll have more on that story as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. Yesterday, the Home Secretary, you heard it here live on the programme, addressed the House of Commons to give an update on the government's latest initiative on getting tough on immigration. This was a masterclass. I can't tell you how strongly I feel about this specific point. This was a masterclass in everything that is wrong with our politics and our politicians in the 21st century. It was a neat and tidy, statistic-laden, pre-prepared, spad-written speech outlining their successes and their intentions. Every word, every phrase came from the Oxbridge minds of the Home Office intelligentsia. A rhythmic monologue of drivel, not a hint of passion, no philosophical drive, no anger or even a drop of animation. Just the usual, not a scintilla of personalised investment as she delivered the story, just words from a departmental press release. Where was the recognition of the crisis? Where was the acknowledgement of the country being hugely compromised by unfettered immigration? Where was the incredulity at nearly 55,000 people crossing the Channel under her watch? Where was it? The problems for housing, the NHS, the welfare system, social cohesion. There was none of this. An entire speech bereft of meaning. Not a single moment when she went off script and looked at those waiting faces on the green benches and said, I've had enough. This situation is unacceptable. It cannot go on. Absolutely nothing. This is the state of our politicians. This is the person, by the way, who's literally in charge of it all. To say this was woeful and inept is being generous. I shouldn't have been, because I live in hope every time one of these chancellors stands up to speak, that we're going to get the real passion. We're going to get the proper recognition for a terrible story and a blight on this country. We're going to get a politician who speaks from the heart and fires it off from the hip. Forget the scripts, forget what the advisors have written. I'm going to get level with you here, UK. I'm going to get angry with you, UK. What's happening on our channel, what's happening in hotels, what's happening in communities is unacceptable. Nothing. Just a stat-laden, pre-prepared speech written by some advisors in an office. It was horrific. But she says there is a plan. Every hotel will be closed. Spoiler alert, the number of migrants in hotels has increased since she came to power. She says to accelerate the one-in, one-out policy. Spoiler alert number 2. Since this announcement, we've had nearly 4,000 in and precisely 0 out. Here's another belter. Sex offenders will be blocked from the asylum system. Spoiler alert number 3. That's literally your job. It's not a pearl of wisdom, Yvette Cooper. Good Lord, she's banned serial rapists and paedophiles from becoming residents in the UK. Isn't she a genius? There will be a temporary ban on migrants bringing in their family. Nan won't be welcome. Spoiler alert number 4. This is not a tough decision, and whilst I appreciate the Tories introduced all of this, it doesn't mean you've made some great, incredible announcement. It means you've simply done what you should always have done. This was horrific stuff. One of the worst speeches because of what it lacked. I didn't expect loads. Cooper's quite a good orator, but I mean she can string words together and sound half confident. Is she driven by an inner ideology? When you see, and I hate to yet again mention the Trump administration, but when you hear some of those guys speaking, whether it's the press secretary at the briefings or whether it's J.D. Vance, you get a sense of a kind of inner core of something. You get a sense of a burning furnace of incredulity or ambition, whatever day it happens to be, coming from the pit of their bellies as they speak. You get the idea that this is their view. What Yvette Cooper read out yesterday was what James Cleverly could have read out a year ago for the Tories. It's the same thing. There was nothing in it where you sense, wow, these guys are onto it, or in this case, finally onto it. Absolutely jack. It was horrific, horrendous. It's such a shame to see our democracy fall in this kind of way, with such heady levels of mediocrity, which even there they fail to fully ever reach. But I'm going to be generous here and ask the question, can Labour finally deliver on immigration? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Steve N. Allen is with us, the comedian and the broadcaster. Good afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here.
Lovely to have you with us. Joining us live on the programme to discuss the big stories of the day, of course. Let's start with this one then. Labour's one-in, one-out deal. I think that's a good place to begin on this. Admitting last night, and this is Yvette Cooper, that there's been literally no people out. Lots of people have come in. Let's have a reminder of what Yvette Cooper had to say.
We need to close all asylum hotels, and we need to do so for good. But that must be done in a controlled and orderly manner, and not through a return to the previous government's chaos that led to the opening of hotels in the first place. Substantial reforms are needed now. In our first year in government, we've taken immediate action, laying the foundations for more fundamental reform. We have restored asylum decision-making and then rapidly increased the rate of decisions. The overall system remains sclerotic, outdated and unfair. So as we committed in the Immigration White Paper, we will shortly set out more radical reforms to modernise the asylum system and to boost our border security, tackling the pull factors, strengthening enforcement, making sure people are treated fairly, reforming the way that the ECHR is interpreted here at home, speeding up the system, cutting numbers and ending the use of hotels.
There it is. Well, she didn't actually mention the one-in, one-out thing there, Steve. It might have been the wrong clip, but nonetheless, you got a broad idea of what the Home Secretary was saying yesterday. What did you make of this?
There's so many phrases in there that I've not even got around to Googling yet to try and work out what they mean. There's lots of words, lots of noise, but I don't really get a sense of the actual steps that'll be taken. Oh, we'll do radical things. Oh, that's just a key word to cut and paste into any political speech, isn't it? Because people like the word radical, and we've got no idea what it actually means in terms of, policies. The only policy we do know about is one in, one out, and as you say, that's been non-out, which is only one away from one out. To be fair,
that's very true. She's only one away. She's one away from making it happen, realising her dream
of getting one out. And as soon as she gets one person out, she'll be like, done it, guys. We can all go. That was radical. Look, the one in, one out thing, which is a pilot scheme anyway, which was never really meant to be anything other than like a placeholder, something to point to. Look what we've done. What we've done won't actually have any meat on the bones at all. But look, we've done a thing. And that's all it was ever about. It's just been able to get a press release out of it. The system, clearly, there's so much is wrong with the idea of one in, one out. And it's not even been brought in yet. The only thing it has done is made Rwanda's relatively stupid waste of £700 million look less of a stupid waste.
Yes.
Because that didn't get rid of anyone. And I tell you what else didn't get rid of anyone, the one in, one out. So we can put both of those in the same
Yeah. Rwanda, one in, one out. I mean, there's obviously a whole chain of things going on here. What about the point, Steve, that I was making here about the kind of state of our politicians, the sort of the inner core of anger, the firebrand speaker that you want to hear. We've had some in the past. They do sort of exist. What we seem to get now, you could have almost written it yourself yesterday when Cooper stood up to speak, was very kind of Westminster. It was very Home Office. It was very SPAD. It was very kind of advisory. It was like a press release and came with all the passion of a block of cheese.
And not even one of those strong cheeses that's got a kick to it. It's like a real mild cheddar.
Yeah.
I've got some sympathy, though. On this, we might disagree. I don't think they can do anger in the Labour Party at the moment because they are a very difficult broad church. Like if you're in Reform UK or if you're in the Conservatives, there are some issues that you can just get all het up about. You know, someone pushed through a barrier at Stratford Station, I'm going to get angry. Whereas if you're in Labour, you need to realise the two edges of your extremes of your party.
Yeah.
People who might vote Tory but voted Labour this time, well, they want to hear about control of migration numbers. Not in an angry way necessarily, but in a practical, solving this problem way. Right at the other end of their broad church, right up against the border between your party with Corbyn and the Greens, they can't make any angry sounds about migration at all because they would lose so many people. So for them, I understand it's a really difficult balancing act. And this is what Starmer's up against, isn't he? That he can't try and out Farage because he won't do it, but by making any sounds like that, he'll lose the other part of his party that'll head off to 100%. Corbyn's Your Party or the Greens. But they're a little bit hamstrung.
But my point on that, Steve, is that if Jeremy Corbyn was still the leader of the Labour Party and become the Prime Minister or whatever, even regardless, if he was giving a response to this, obviously his position would be very different. He would be very sort of pro looking after anyone who turned up on our shores. That's fine. It's a democracy. He's allowed to think that. But what you would have heard would have been a very, very passionate, from the heart, from the gut, from the core of his very brain and existence. You'd have heard that. It would have been a kind of socialist Marxist version of J.D. Vance or Donald Trump. You'd have got that. So at least you could go, wow, I disagree with this bloke completely. He's a nutter. Yeah. But boy, what passion he has. That's what's missing, isn't it?
Well, I love your analysis. As ever, I doubt your premise. I've not been around your premises, but I think they're a bit dodgy.
If
Corbyn were giving it all the passion, he wouldn't have been Prime Minister because he would have been passionately aiming to a smaller niche. And this is the weird thing about our system. Yeah. You do have to try and reach a broad voter base as well. So I think, yes, Corbyn could have been passionate and he would have won an argument and lost an election, which is one of his favourite things that he can do.
Yeah, true. Let's move to this. Also happening yesterday, of course, 24 hours on now from that little sort of mini shake-up of his economic team, which appears to have undermined Rachel Reeves by bringing these three new wizard-type economic experts. On from that, as a way of settling it and lining and laying out his intentions, here's what Keir Starmer said yesterday on X.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members. I made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery now, marching forward to the next phase of government.
Phase 2. He's not a flipping astronaut, Steve. What's he going on about there? We're moving into phase 2 now. You can just know that, again, an advisor, just before they filmed that, went, Prime Minister, why don't you use the term phase 2? Because it makes it look like there's a new thing to come, that this was all designed. It might be a bit rickety to begin with, but don't worry, phase 2's on the way. I'm dead excited, Steve, about phase 2, aren't you?
I wonder what comes after it. It's phase 3.
Yeah, I think so.
It reminds me of those press launch things they do for Marvel films. They group those into like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Like they got the idea from then. We're not even excited for Marvel films these days. So there's no chance that no one cared about that. I mean, so many words that don't mean anything. We're going to move forward confidently. Well, of course you are. No one's going to say we're going to do phase 2 with no confidence. But they're just pointless positive words. We'll take positive action. Tell us the thing you're going to do. Don't just call it phase 2. Look, so at least there's been a reshuffle. At least, and I think it's good to bring in better economic minds, because the biggest problem that we're actually facing is economic. The ones that's making the headlines is all migration, but the economy is the one that needs to really, really be fixed. I disagree with a lot of the analysis, though, that this makes Rachel Reeves look like she's on dodgy ground. I think she's absolutely bulletproof because of when she cried. Do you remember what happened after she cried? So she's in the big day when she's suddenly crying in the background in the Commons, and the bond market absolutely panicked, absolutely lost its business, didn't they? There was rates started to go up because they were worried that if you replace her, you might replace her with someone who borrows and spends with no good direction. And as soon as that happened, I thought, well, there's no way Starmer can ever get rid of her. Because as soon as they do, the borrowing's already at the highest we've had on record, isn't it? That was yesterday's news. So I don't think he can afford to mess with her. So bringing in extra economic minds will hopefully be good, hopefully come up with solutions. But I think she stands more chance of outlasting him.
See, I think that might be true. I mean, there is a curious kind of way that people kind of keep hold of their jobs. And, certainly we know in previous administrations, people who are almost unsackable, but not for good reasons, but just for these sort of curious reasons. And Boomerang Rach with her Greta Thunberg hairstyle is obviously going to be there for, the duration by the looks of things. That's the other one, Steve, while we're on it, platitudes and cliches. Starmer calling for a decade of national renewal.
Good.
Now we want national renewal. It's like, this nonsense doesn't mean anything. Stop it. Just give me passion. But he's speaking to 10 different galleries.
I think it's always worth checking what the opposite of what you've just said is. It's some sort of null hypothesis thing, isn't it? I don't really understand it. But when someone says something, just check to see if the opposite was ever worth saying.
True.
No one's ever going to say, we've decided to not renew anything for a whole decade. No, that would be a ridiculous thing to say. So saying the opposite to it is just a waste of gas, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what they're really good at. They're making noises. All of it sound positive because they, as you say, they've got the press people who know all the right phrases.
Oh, they do.
I can't remember the last actual thing that was said by any of these politicians.
The best one, in terms of cliches, the bullseye, of course, is that, as a government, we intend to grow the economy. So that's your job. Like, you've literally, it's almost your only job. I mean, it would be curious if you had a different take on that, frankly.
Yeah, what we're going to do for the next 3 years is take a massive slap on the chin, and then we'll start again. That's phase 3.
Yeah,
is recession.
Phase 3. I'm so excited about phase 3. Stay with us, Steve. Steve Van Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, with us on the programme. Over to you. Do you want to give the government the benefit of the doubt when it comes to immigration? Can Labour finally deliver? You heard what Yvette Cooper said yesterday. You've heard what Keir Starmer has had to say on this. What are you making? Are you now confident that the old socialists can come in and make this thing work, sort it out finally, so that 55,000 people, just under their watch, of course, make it over to the UK in rubber boats? That's where we're at, kids. That's the UK in the 21st century. 0344 499 1000. Keep it here. It's Talk.
as Mike and I have always said, you are what you put in your mouth. And I haven't as yet met anybody who doesn't eat a lot that's 25 stone. Or drink a lot.
Well,
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I could go further. You know, eat less. Exercise more.
Yeah, eat less,
Well, it's not
more.
hard, is it? Oh, I'm a lifestyle expert. How do I improve my life? Look at Mikey. Mikey's changed his life, hasn't he? He's only drinking 4 bottles of red a night now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
4 minutes after 1 o'clock. Welcome back to the Home of Common Sense. Steve and Alan is with us, chewing the fat of the big stories of the day. This one really only breaking in the last few hours. Armed police arresting Father Ted creator Graeme Linehan for a couple of anti-trans tweets as he stepped off an aeroplane. I mean, this, Steve, is extraordinary on a number of levels. But, OK, it's armed police because the police at airports tend to be armed. I get that. But he's written in, I think it was in his Substack, or certainly an online post of the experience he had landing, having come back from a long flight to discover not 1, not 2, but 5 cops to arrest him for some stuff he'd said online.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't need to know the content of the tweets to know what I think about this.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing this for someone for a tweet. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're right, 5 police officers. What, just in case he got out of hand and tried to send another message? 2 of you need to pin him down and the 3 delete his tweet. I find the most appalling thing of this is the bail condition that he got, or whatever the condition. They said he just simply wasn't allowed to go near X afterwards. If you read the whole post, look, he talks about how it infected his blood pressure and then he was sent to A&E for it. And I guess it is a stressful thing. But the fact that he was released on condition that he'd not go on X, no, that's sickening.
And you're not even. I don't think you're even allowed to impose that as a condition, are you?
Yeah, that really, because people use Orwellian all the time. There's never a news story where the Daily Mail's not said Orwellian. Do you know what I mean? But banning you from having the freedom to say the thing, I don't need to agree with your joke about trans people or not to say you're allowed to do it. And if people disagree with it, they're allowed to comment underneath.
Yes.
It's a great system. They can send a message directly to you and say, oh, no, I don't like this joke. And look how we crack on with life. But for some reason, we've moved into this other version of the world where they send 5 armed police to tell you you're not allowed on X again. Ridiculous.
It's extraordinary. And the 5 coppers thing. I mean, fair enough, if it was Dwayne Johnson arriving or something, they might need 5 of us this. It's Graeme Linehan, hardly known for his ninja skills. I don't think he was about to, kick off and somehow scissor kick the chops of PC Smithers.
I don't know that. He's a big man. I gigged with him in London not too long ago, and he's a big guy. No, I wouldn't like to take him on, but I wouldn't have to, because I could disagree with him on Twitter if I wanted to. It's almost like the system is set up to allow debate. So the only reason you need to get police involved is if, look, we say the same when we talk about people being sent to prison for tweets about rights or whatever. Even if the person themselves disagree with the content of the tweet, for some reason we're moving into this territory where people are being sent to prison for messages. And if you let that happen now, you'll be really annoyed when it goes the other way around. And I know this almost feels like it's off topic, but Ryland Clark, I've seen a lot of people online saying, why is he not being treated like Gary Lineker? Why aren't people calling for him to be sacked? And it reminds me of when we were talking about Gary Lineker, and I always said it back then, I didn't think he should be sacked for tweets because if you like it now, you'll hate it when it flips. And the same thing's happening with Graeme Linehan. If you think, I disagree with his point of view, isn't it great he gets arrested? No, because someone will say something you like and they'll get arrested. The only time it's worth fighting for free speech is when it's something you don't agree with.
100%. And finally, let's move to this story, Steve. An area you know well, that of comedy. Merseyside apparently has topped the list of the area with the most comedians in Britain. Let's have a listen to one famous man that you might recognise.
Gotta be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to be here. For those who haven't yet worked out,
I'm from Liverpool. Yeah. It just shows the BBC's commitment to ethnic diversity. They could have put me on anywhere, but they don't know. Let's throw them in Manchester and see what happens.
John Bishop, of course, is one of many that have a disproportionate number of comedians coming from Liverpool. I wonder is there anything behind that story? Is there a reason for that? You're thinking of John Bishop, you naturally think of Jimmy Tarbuck, all sorts of people from Les Dennis to Freddie Starr, Ken Dodd to Mick Miller. The list goes on.
Oh, don't forget Stan Boardman. You've got
Stan Boardman,
Stan Boardman in there.
Stan Boardman. Germans.
I think don't do the one about the plane. No. But I think it's not as much as an exciting story as people think it is. So everyone's presumption is that it's to do with the accent. Oh, it's a funny accent. Well, there are loads of places with funny accents, and I mean funny in a nice way, not in an insulting way. I don't want to get the letters. And then other people think there's like an attitude of comedy, and it is true. Whenever I gig in Liverpool, sometimes you get a sense that regardless of who's on stage, the audience thinks they're funnier, which is not something Pavarotti has to deal with, like 200 people thinking, I'll show you singing, pal. So there's a weird there's that going on. But it's none of that. I'm afraid it's less sexy. It's where's your open mic circuits? The most well-represented groups are people from Manchester and Liverpool and London. You don't really have a recognisable London accent, so you can't really tell. So it's harder to identify. But if you want to get your Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, it takes you a long while doing that on the open mic circuit with 5-minute spots. Some top scientists could work out how long it takes you to do that, right?
Yeah.
But if you come from a place like Cornwall, which on the list has very few comedians, so it's really underrepresented, but let's be honest, it has a funny accent. But there's no open mic circuit there. So sadly, it's boring. This is not clickbait. This will not go viral. It is simply the case. These are people who have access to open mic gigs, and that's how you get a career.
So there's a lot of, are there more comedy clubs in Liverpool?
Yeah. Oh, there's a lovely scene both in Manchester and Liverpool. And as much as that joke made it seem like never the twain, it's not hard to travel from one to the other if you want to get an open mic thing. In London, loads of open mic spots. But if you want to do the open mic circuit anywhere else in the UK, it's not well served. So that's why those two areas have loads of comedians, and it's a boring answer to what should have been a funny topic. But there you go. That's what I'm like.
There it is. Listen, Steve, thank you as ever. Steve N. Allen, the comedian, not from Liverpool, and broadcaster. Thank you to him. Is it disproportionate, or is it the open mic theory that Steve just put forward? You could go through loads of others. Ted Robbins, who else? Freddie Starr, did I mention Freddie? Les Dennis, Chris McCausland, the list goes on. But is it overrepresented in the world of comedy? Messages on that, 87222. We'll come back to your question. When it comes to channel migration, can Labour finally deliver on migration? That's what Yvette Cooper was hoping to put out from yesterday's big statement in the House of Commons. I don't think it's gone down quite as well as... Well, maybe that's exactly what they wanted to do, to pretty much announce nothing at all. If that was the intention, they succeeded absolutely brilliantly. 0344 499 1000. Leave a voice note there as well. When you do leave a voice note, try and make it nice and clear, and make sure your car isn't too loud, because that often precludes us from being able to play them out. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through in this section. This comes from Dan in Kent. Afternoon, Ian. The Labour Party have no chance to get to grips with illegal migration because it's not in their party interest to turn boats around. He has too many human rights MPs, and if Starmer took reforms stances, letters would be in and he'd be gone by Christmas. That is, as Steve and Alan was telling us in the last section, that is one of the obvious issues. When Yvette Cooper was making that speech, she's got a gallery over there, and she's trying to appease, and a gallery over the other side, and probably one or two in between as well. Labour has admitted that no channel migrants have been sent back to France yet. This is the one-in, one-out policy, despite promising in July that it would take effect within weeks. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, of course, promising to crack down on family reunion rules, stopping refugees bringing partners and children to the UK. She also wants to close all asylum hotels before 2029. That's the deadline after angry protests, of course, across the country. Let's speak with Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent at The Sun, who's written a lot about this area. Julia, I mean, it's not... We were making the point, and this is a slightly sort of separate point, I was making the point at the beginning about the kind of politicians we have compared to, say, the United States, where they just go off script and get very angry about stuff, whether it's J.D. Vance or even that woman that does the White House press conferences. They seem to just shoot from the hip with thinking, you know, press release? We don't need a press release, we just say how we feel. We do the very opposite over here. There's this, you know, if you listen to Yvette Cooper, I think a student of politics or journalism should look at that speech yesterday. It was beautifully neat and tidy. It had some little statistics in it. It had all the hallmarks of Oxbridge Spads written all over it. It was the speech that if James Cleverly was still in that position would also have given. It's sort of how we roll here, isn't it? It's like they don't like, you know, they like to have it all nicely set out.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of what she announced yesterday had already been announced.
Yeah.
So there wasn't that much actual substance to the speech. But yeah, as you say, it was very measured. There wasn't a lot of emotive language in it. It was very much, you know, we want to be seen as the party that are trying to get things done, and we're doing it in a very sensible way.
Yeah.
But, you know, to an outsider, that might seem like you're actually not doing a great deal.
You almost want to say, I'd like to have said, walked away from the dispatch box, start walking around the Commons. And here's another thing, you know, some real anger, some sort of that firebrand stuff that, you know, some politicians did have. Even Jeremy Corbyn had that, for goodness sake. But we don't really... But politicians don't take those kind of risks, particularly in this area. And as I said a second ago, when you're the current Labour Party, you've got Reform UK biting at your heels. The Tories... not quite so much in that respect. But she's playing to more than one gallery, right? I mean, she's obviously doesn't want to be seen as, you know, we don't want any migrants round here, because that would lose her all of that side of the party over to probably to Corbyn's new party. Simultaneously, she doesn't want to be seen to be too soft. So they're trying to do this, but it's that whole thing, is if you try to please everyone, you really please no one.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, they're clear in their, what was the manifesto pledge to close all the asylum hotels.
Yeah.
But then they're also clear that they do have a legal duty to house asylum seekers under UK law. So, you know, they're trying to walk that middle line, which, as you say, isn't really pleasing either side of it.
Yeah, exactly. And she, of course, since she's been Home Secretary, since Labour have been in power, around about 55,000, just short of 55,000 people across the Channel. This is an enormous figure. I think because we see that number or similar numbers so regularly, I think we lose sight of how big that is. And, you know, I always make the analogy, if 55,000 people had jumped over the barriers at Heathrow Airport, you know, you'd have the world's press circling in helicopters going, what the heck is going on here? Not much has happened in that respect. They certainly haven't stopped the boats. They certainly haven't stopped people staying in hotels. That number's also increased since they came to power. And the one-in, one-out thing, because we've had, I think, just shy of 4,000 in and none out, which, as far as I know, that wasn't quite the slogan.
Yeah, so it was the 5th of August that we had this deal brought into effect. They said it was a trial scheme and it was going to take a while to come into play, but I don't think they quite realised how long.
Yeah.
So the whole of August, just over 3,500 people came across the channel. As you say, nobody has yet been sent back to France. It's not yet up and running. People are still coming over. And I think you say, we get really used to those numbers. 3,500 people coming over in the month of August. That didn't happen. This is still a relatively new crisis. The small boats didn't start coming until 2018.
Yeah.
So before that, this would have been an extraordinary number, but I guess now we're quite used to it.
We are quite used to it, aren't we? Keir Starmer said, reference an announcement he made yesterday about his sort of inner economics team being kind of reshaped. But he referred to, and I know it's a typical sort of prime ministerial trick, that's phase 1 done. He said, we're now moving into phase 2. And I was kind of Googling phase 2. I got a few Star Trek references and, I think Elon Musk's rocket refers to going into phase 2. What can you you've got your ear to the ground, Julia, on this stuff. What can we expect in phase 2 of this government? Is there anything big, or is it just a word he made up because an advisor told him to say it?
I think it's tricky. I think that video that you posted yesterday that you're referring to and talks about phase 2. What does that actually materialise into? What is he focusing on? I don't think that was that clear.
Yeah. Well, it's phase 2, wasn't it?
It's phase 2, whatever that means. But I think a year into government, the argument which is made over and over again that this is the previous government's fault and we inherited this mess.
Yeah.
That was kind of, that didn't really wash a couple of months in, let alone a year in. So I think we're going to have to start seeing something different.
Yeah, it's a year and 2 months almost in, isn't it now? So they're now firmly into their second year. We will watch with interest. Julia, thank you. We will speak again. Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent over there at The Sun. Thank you to her. Let's get a word from Tony Smith, former head of UK Border Force. Tony, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us as ever. So 55,000, just shy of people crossing the channel in small boats. We've got none out and 4,000 in. Record numbers of people in hotels. How do you think they're doing so far?
Well, not doing very well, obviously, Ian, because, as you say, the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? Record numbers of boat crossings and record numbers of asylum applications. They've been quite fortunate last week or so. I think we've got one of those weather situations in the channel, so we haven't seen any reports of boats for the last week, but don't be fooled by that. The weather changes and so will the intake change. I think what I would say, Ian, is what you're just talking about there, is that she's come out swinging out of the summer holidays. The Spads have been right at working hard, and these announcements are things we wouldn't have heard a year ago. Things like putting asylum seekers in warehouses instead of hotels, saying asylum dependents, actually have to prove support and accommodation tests. Students are going to be told to go back, which hasn't. They tend to just stay. It's okay now, Ian, to put flags up in your back garden. Apparently, she's been doing that as well. So I do detect a move. They've clearly been hurt by by what's happened over the last few months. But the proof of the pudding on the border will always be in the eating, as you well know. It will be those figures that they will be measured by. And as things stand, we are still on track. Unless this weather carries on like it is, we're still on track for a record year.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose they're kind of Labour are going to be a little bit reluctant to use the phrase "we will stop the boats." I'm sure every time someone's written a speech for the Home Secretary, if it has the word "stop" and "boat" in the same sentence, it's removed, because that's, of course, what Rishi Sunak promised, and it got nowhere. But ultimately, there was no reference in her speech to stopping the boats, even if she was using a euphemism. None whatsoever. It's almost as if the problem doesn't exist. And that's really what's required here, isn't it? To literally stop. We can talk about plugging gaps. They're talking the hotel. We should never be at the stage where we're talking about hotels and one in, one out, because the situation shouldn't exist in the first place.
Yeah, you're right. And you know this as well as anybody down there. it is the boat intake coming into Kent that people are going to spot. All this other stuff, I mean, you can argue, well, the boats is not all of the asylum claims. We've got legal migration issues, we've got all kinds of overstay issues, but is the boats. The focus is on the boats. It's highly visible illegal entry going on, and people are fed up with it. And so they should really focus on that. Well, I've been saying all along, Ian, whether it's this government or last government, we've got to detain them when they come off a boat. We can't use Manston as a throughput centre where we simply fingerprint them and then put them in a hotel. We need to detain them, and we need to make sure they stay detained. Yeah. And ideally, I would be invoking those provisions that we had in the 2002 legislation to say, you've got a connection with a safe third country, which is France. You could have claimed asylum in France. You chose not to. Ergo, your asylum claim is inadmissible. They tried to do that in the IMA to 2023. That's being repealed now. So as things stand, everybody who gets across into our waters is going to be allowed to claim asylum, allowed to claim human rights, all the rest of it, Ian. And you know what happens then. Once they're into that system, it's very, very hard to get them out of it.
100%. Tony, very thorough stuff. Thank you. Tony Smith, he knows his way around this story because he's the former head of UK Border Force. Over to you on this one. Can Labour finally deliver on immigration? I laugh at this because we kind of know the answer, but there's always a little bit of us that kind of, you sort of live in hope and go, could they be, wouldn't it be weird if they managed to turn it around? Could they actually do the unthinkable? And of course, what Yvette Cooper, and because they're so awful, these people, and I mean awful as in, I've met Yvette Cooper a number of times, very pleasant lady. I don't dispute that she's very bright, but a politician of ambition rather than ideological drive. I don't know what makes her antenna start flashing and get animated about something, get really angry. She used to get angry with Theresa May. When Theresa May was Home Secretary and she was Shadow Home Secretary, there was clearly no love lost there, and you saw a little bit of passion from Cooper. Now she's got the job, there's nothing at all. And I know I'm repeating this phrase, these pre-prepared, sort of almost press release style, very neat and tidy, nicely delivered, clipped tones of sensible policy of what we're doing. There's nothing. Where's the balls, God damn it? Where is the booster rockets? Where's the passion? Where's the belief? What does she believe in? I haven't got a Scooby-Doo what she believes in on this stuff. Paul's in Cardiff. What have you got for us, Paul? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I mean, 4,000 in and none gone out.
Yeah.
I mean, their mathematics isn't very good. No wonder the economy's in the state it's in.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, of course, the other part of that story, Paul, is that even if 2,000 had gone out, another 2,000 would have come in under the basis of this agreement. So it doesn't, mathematically, it's a zero-sum game. It's utterly ludicrous. So it doesn't solve the problem of numbers. It's meant to solve the problem of the kind of immigrant you get coming into the country.
Well, I don't think Nigel Farage has to do any more because both parties are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
And leaving the way open for him.
You don't have to do anything.
No.
They really don't. I mean, it's that point. I know they've got their work cut out because they're a new party and they have to put infrastructure in place that the existing parties wouldn't have to, kind of spend time worrying about because the cogwheels of how they work have been there for years. So they've got their work cut out. But in terms of, they've just got to sit back and watch Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer give more speeches, right?
No. Plus the fact that this problem now with the court ruling of the immigrants having to get out, then the government and the hotel people have appealed against it, and they've gone the other way. It's going to cause absolute riots.
Yeah, it's not good. Listen, Paul, thank you for starting us off. Paul in Cardiff, 0344 499 1000. It's a bit annoying, the court case over the hotel, because it was, I think this has got a little bit lost in translation to a degree, was never about should a hotel in your area, Epping in this case, house migrants. It was all about the legality of the business terms of what the hotel is allowed to do. So it was actually nothing to do, oddly, with migrants. So I know there was a lot of talk about left-wing judges and God knows what. It was really a planning issue as to what use the hotel is legally allowed to implement in terms of its purpose of business. So that's why it was originally told it couldn't house migrants, because the terms and conditions of their business arrangement didn't suggest that, and the appeal was based on the fact that actually if you look at the small print it did suggest that, and everything was in motion to make it happen. So the judgment was, yeah, actually they haven't broken the law. It was never really about migrants. It would be almost as if somebody had set up a hobby craft store in the middle of it. The same legal action could have happened. You haven't got any right to do this, or we have got right to do it. So it's but it's nonetheless, and we're living in a world of all sorts of bizarre catalysts where debates and protests are happening out of sometimes the most interesting and left of field kind of events. You know, there was a riot in Southport. There was riots in Southport, and they were short-lived. But that did then spawn genuine protest, and that might be an unconventional way of genuine protest starting, but it's true. And similarly with the migrant hotel stuff, the protests may well have started in all sorts of fashions, be it through social media or where else. But now there is a genuine body of people saying, look, this is not how this country should be functioning in the 21st century. It's just not how it should be. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Trying to be rude, I could go further. You know, eat less, exercise more.
Yeah, eat less,
well, it's not
more.
hard, is it? Oh, I'm a lifestyle expert. How do I improve my life? Look at Mikey. Mikey's changed his life, hasn't he? He's only drinking 4 bottles of red a night now.
%90 of British people will never live in a brand new house with underfloor heating, and it just should not be the case that you can break the law and within days be housed in a place like, well, not days, they've obviously spent some time in a hotel and then they'd be moved to, but this also opens up the secondary question that Labour are banging on about closing these hotels. but then the number of people arriving are at record levels. So they might close the hotels, but these people will still be being housed on the taxpayers' expense. And where are they going to move? They're going to use
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 10 to 2. This will be Chris in Epsom. What's going on, Chris?
Hi, Ian. It's been a minute, but we've spoken before. Actually,
we've spoken loads of times, Chris.
Yeah, all right. A couple of things I want to say. First of all, the interview with Yvette Cooper this morning, how disingenuous, how embarrassing for her office and her department, and how diminishing of that office, and how disingenuous to the population. I've got flags, I've got bunting, I've got this, I've got that. What a load of rubbish.
Do you reckon if you went round to Yvette and Ed's house, they've really got flags around the living room? I don't think that's quite true.
Well, that was what she was pulled up for, wasn't it? On the expense account.
No, I think you're
7 years ago.
I think you're probably talking about Jackie Smith, but anyway.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I do apologise then to Cooper.
Indeed. Anyway, go on.
The other thing is, right, I've mentioned this to you before, and you laughed, and you said, oh, no, they're useless, right? Let's just have a look, because it really stinks. It really does stink when you look at it. You've got Starmer, Hermer, Felipe Sands, the KC for Mauritius.
Yeah, the Chagos breaking dude.
Lord Bean, he's well named, isn't he? Yeah. Lord Bean, and Sherry Blair, all at the Matrix Chambers.
Yeah.
All human rights lawyers, all believing in this no borders, one nation, Marxist type rubbish. Mm. You've got Tony Blair pushing the Labour Party to do the digital ID.
Loves it.
Yeah, absolutely. He always has done that. And that brings us more in line with Europe, which is what Starmer wants to do. Yeah. All of that absolutely stinks. And the arrest of the TV scriptwriter,
yes,
Heathrow. That is there is no way that he incited violence. There's no way that the police should have shown up. There's no way that he should be told he can't tweet anymore. Yeah. What is this? I'll tell you what I've done. You can probably hear it in my voice, I'm a bit wound up. I've just penned a letter to the president. And
president of what? The Fabian Society or the United States?
No, I've sent an email to the president of the United States.
Okay, that's good.
Which I would never do, speak out against a PM of any colour, of any party in this country. Yeah. But this man is destroying this country from within.
Okay.
And I've written to him and told him what I think. And I've also told him about the non-invitation for Nigel and the latest arrest of the scriptwriter. I hope that Trump either forces Starmer to give Nigel an invitation, or he does a photo opportunity that puts him in the cold where he puts...
Yeah, Farage is not the only person not invited, in fairness.
Well, hang on a minute. You got a Pratt that walks around... Sorry, you got a Twit that bounces around on a bouncy ball.
He's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, so they're the third biggest party. That's not changed in decades. So the Green Party haven't been invited either. I don't think they would go.
But where's Reform polling?
Well, it's not about polling. It doesn't work like that. The same way that you don't get an invite to a TV debate just because of polling. Although you're right, that's going to be interesting, Chris, come the next election, because it would be extraordinary if Reform were not around the table. Listen, I've got to move, Chris, no other reason than time. Let's get a voice note. This comes from Nick.
I just want to say this whole nonsense about phase 2 is just a really lame way for this absolutely mockery of a Labour government to try and make us think that they actually have a plan for what they want to do.
Love it. Great voice note. That's from Nick. You want to get in on that? Same number, 03444991000. Let's get a word from Simon in Derby. We've not got long, Simon, but I know you can do it. What have you got for us?
I can do it. I just hi. I just googled ships, liners. How many can you get on board? At least 5,000 they can carry.
Okay.
So you often see.
Oh, you said ship, did you?
Ship, yes. Yeah,
sorry, I literally thought you swore then. I thought you said liners, and I thought, right, yeah, there's a lot of those coming out of the government. Go on, fire away. 5,000, did you say?
Well, I just googled it, and it said you can take at least 5,000 on a big liner. You can take about 5,000 people. Yeah. So if the illegal people we put them all on there, they then wouldn't be illegal because they didn't step foot on our shore. They'd be actually offshored, and that would keep them straight while they're being processed. Yeah. It stops the community being concerned about all sorts of nefarious things going on. Yep. What's the problem?
I have no idea, and it's not dissimilar. You know, the Australian scheme, I know there are, some differences logistically, but the principle is that you never actually set foot on terra firma if you want to become a migrant. If you try to go to Australia via that route, via a boat, you never end up there. And even if you're deemed to be legit, you still don't go to Australia. So the deterrent is huge. And when we spoke to the former Foreign Secretary of Australia on this show a couple of weeks back, he said there now is no longer any issue, Simon.
Good.
It doesn't exist, so it works. No. Listen, the news is upon us. I said short and sweet, and you did it brilliantly. Simon, thank you very much indeed for that. One here, why do we have a legal duty to house asylum seekers and France don't? Apparently France do. I just don't think they do it very well. Similarly with Germany these days. They've changed their tune, haven't they? Loads more to come. Can Labour finally deliver on immigration? I mean, don't hold your breath, but I'm bound to ask the question after that big bonanza of a speech from Yvette Cooper yesterday. We'll continue with your calls on that. 0344 499 1000. Right now, you're listening to Talk. Let's get the news at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. There's so much stuff going on at this end. Labour admitting no Channel migrants have been returned to France under its one in, one out. The current stats are this: 3,910 in, 0 out. Not really working out, but Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said it will work. She promises also to tighten family reunion rules and accelerate closures of asylum hotels. Do you now trust Labour finally to deliver on this contentious of all issues? Also this afternoon, Father Ted creator Graeme Linehan says he was arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow Airport over a series of anti-trans tweets, claiming he was treated like a terrorist as soon as he stepped off the plane. How has it come to this? Seriously? 5 cops, a couple of tweets? We'll have more on that shortly. And more than 1,000 homes are sitting empty, with construction on a further 35,000 stalling because the builder safety regulator is delaying approvals, with fewer than a third meeting the government's 12-week target. Even if all that was addressed, we've still got a housing crisis, kids. Details on the way. Anything you want to add in to this? 0344 499 1000. More of your calls in just a moment, and of course we'll bring you all the breaking news as it happens as well. There is an awful lot to get through in this section, including this story. The Tories say they will make North Sea oil and gas the cornerstone of Britain's economy if they win the next election. I'm tempted to put a bit of a spoiler alert in there, but you know what I'm saying. This is according to Kemi Badenoch, a new announcement. She insists the Tories and only the Conservatives are backing the UK's North Sea industry after pledging to extract all available oil and gas from the continental shelf. Labour's Energy Secretary Ed Miliband criticised the plan, saying the Tories have learnt nothing and warning the policy could hit working people's wallets. But will it? In a moment, we're going to speak to Hannah Martin, co-founder of Green New Deal Rising. First, Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spite. Good afternoon to you, Fraser.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Always good to have you with us. I mean, we know what game Kemi Badenoch is playing here. She's trying to plant a flag in different places where previous Tory administration, of which, annoyingly for her, she was part of, failed to address. But here she is. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. It's a new Tory announcement. We're going to drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, and I think it's good news. I mean, it's been a cross-party consensus for the last couple of decades that basically climate change should come above all other considerations. Now, you know, I don't think it's a problem for governments to worry about climate change, to think about tackling climate change. But I think we've now seen the quite bitter fruits of putting that above all else, particularly above energy prices and energy security. We now in the UK, thanks largely to the pursuit of net zero, have the highest industrial energy prices in the developed world, which is leading factories to close, is causing all kinds of industries to suffer. We as households have to pay the 4th highest electricity bills in the world. Again, down to this pursuit of net zero. The more renewables we roll out, the less we use of gas and coal, and also we've abandoned, or we've not gone far enough on nuclear as well. The more we pursue that kind of policy mix, it's just inevitable that the prices will rise and households and industries will struggle. So, Kemi Badenoch's announcement is good news. It's good to see North Sea oil prioritised. It's a really important industry for the UK. We're currently in the absurd position, as she herself has pointed out, where we're importing oil and gas from Norway, which is literally dug up from the same seabed as we would have access to. But because of our own net zero rules, we refuse to do that. And actually, ironically, that's actually quite environmentally damaging, because we might as well transport it directly to the UK rather than it being processed in Norway and then shipped over here. So it's a very sensible move. It's a step in the right direction. But, you know, as you say, it's probably a policy that will be taken up by perhaps a Reform UK government rather than a Tory government.
And certainly, if you look at the Chinese are an interesting example of this, because we know that the Chinese, they'll burn anything that moves, you know, if it provides a bit of energy, and they've got furnaces and all sorts of other stuff going on. Simultaneously, they've got more solar panels and wind farms than anywhere else on the planet. But they seem to have settled on, and I can't believe I'm saying this about the Chinese government, but they seem to have settled on a slightly more sensible idea. Look, we're not going to bite the hand that currently feeds us. We'll have all this other stuff going on. At some point, the technology will be amazing. All of us would support a new technology if it was cleaner and cheaper. Of course we would, if it was. But in the meantime, you know, we've got all this stuff underneath us, around us, that we can use. And that's certainly what they've done over there in China. So, yeah, there might be a contradiction in it all, but they're not saying otherwise. They're not claiming to be the green answer to the global problems. They're simply saying we're not going to shut off infrastructure that currently fuels our nation. And maybe that's the approach we need to take. You know, yeah, let's invent new stuff. That's brilliant. But in the meantime, we've got about 300 years worth of oil underneath us.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. China is taking the approach of everything, everywhere, all at once, because they recognise that a growing economy requires more energy. And we seem to have taken the opposite approach, actually. The result of net zero is that we, in the UK, actually produce 20% less electricity than we did in 2005. Yeah. Now, many people who are on the Climate Change Committee will say, isn't that excellent? It shows we're getting more efficient. We don't need as much power. That's nonsense. For wealth, you need more power. And we can see with our own, you know, deindustrialization, with factories packing up, moving often to China, that this is a real problem for us. We need to be producing more energy and because we're not going to compete on labour costs, are we? So let's compete on energy costs. Let's try and have the cheapest possible energy, and that can only come by producing more of it.
Yeah, spot on. Fraser, thank you as ever. Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. Loads of comments coming from you. You want to comment on that, by the way? Can Benny Badenoch, can Kemi Badenoch change your mind? What's going to get you to vote Tory? I mean, it's just such a curious story, isn't it? Every time something comes up where the Tories announce something, you look at it and think, yeah, you know, the Conservative, I remember the Tories, yeah, back in the day. Kind of gone from the scene, really. They're not in the conversation even. The current government aren't even treating them as opposition, because Reform UK have nipped at the heels of all of that. Back to your calls. Ian is down in London on Yvette Cooper and immigration. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hold on, Ian. One second. Oh, go. Right, anyway, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, basically, with it, Cooper, as you said, where are the balls? Well, I think they're either in the TV station at ITV or at home, because she left them there with Ed. But basically, with Yvette Cooper, she showed one major thing yesterday when she stood up in Parliament, that the government are out and out liars. Because all that business with like letting people in, they're letting in people from Gaza for the university students and everything else, which proved one thing. Whatever happens, even if Hamas and everything else decide to invade again Israel, quite simply, they're not going to do anything about it. They've already said they're going to sort of like let them all in. They're doing that, as I said to you the other day, with the hotels. They're letting in all the immigrants, and this country has got to wake up. They're lying to you every single day of the week, people.
So you think the government want to let in more?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
What do you think? Go on.
Sorry.
No,
you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, what would be, to what advantage would that be in terms of Keir Starmer and his crew?
Because basically it goes back to all the business with the votes. The original thing, and I always sort of thought this years ago, that when Tony Blair was in, he let all the immigrants in because he needed more Labour votes. And if you let them in and you look after them, they're going to vote Labour. And quite simply, the big thing is shown in all the major cities, all the sort of supposedly minority all vote for Labour.
But does that, because every time somebody crunches the numbers on that, they're usually in areas that would probably be Labour anyway, which would be metropolitan areas.
Yeah, but slowly but surely they are moving out, and especially now with the Tories, Reform, and the Liberal Democrats, to an extent, all breaking up the votes in the other areas, right? That they're giving a little bit here, a little bit there. It means that even if the Labour before was only the second in the area, suddenly they become the number one because they're splitting the vote.
But there's not enough. I mean, unless you got in like several more million people, you're not going to significantly change that. I mean, I can see how it looks, but I don't know whether constituency by constituency you would actually change the fabric of a government based on that.
Well, the thing is, in every, even with the polls and everything, they say, like, Reform would win it by a landslide. I don't see it. Truthfully, I don't see it.
No, they won't win it by a landslide yet.
Nowhere, no. And quite simply, I think that what will happen is it will still be a split government. And if you're getting it, or a split parliament, so quite simply, if some of them go to, like, the Liberal Democrats, again, they'll do a deal with Labour, they will get in. Right? And that's how it is. It is. The country has got to wake up, whether they want to carry on as they always did, or do they want to change and be ruled by people that really have got no consideration for the British people. They don't care.
All right, on that, listen, Ian, I hear you. On that point, that's Ian in London, who thinks this is deliberate in order to essentially almost gerrymander the voting system. I know it's a very seductive suggestion. I think when they've tried to work out whether it clearly there's going to be some areas, not everybody who comes in will get the chance to vote, by the way. Not everybody in that community disproportionately are animated voters either. I'm just looking at the current numbers I remember reading on this. And in most areas where those people would likely settle, they would be more left-leaning regions anyway. That seems to be the answer to that, but who knows? Watch this space. Kemi Badenoch says she's going to solve it. Kemi Badenoch's going to solve everything. She's going to start drilling for oil. Hannah Martin is co-founder of the Green New Deal Rising. Good afternoon to you, Hannah.
Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm good as gold. Nice to have you with us. So Kemi Badenoch has decided, despite being part of a previous government that decided the very opposite to this, has decided that, actually, no, let's get out those drills and bring that oil back onto the surface and reignite the United Kingdom. What's wrong with that?
Well, I suppose, from my perspective, the first thing that I think is wrong with it is that, I think that climate change is a problem. I know that's fairly basic to say, but it's worth just saying. I think it's a problem, and I think that we need to tackle it. And burning more fossil fuels is going to take us on the wrong pathway. So if we burn all of the gas in existing oil fields that we've already committed to in the North Sea, that would take us past sort of a safe climate limit as agreed internationally in the Paris Climate Agreement by international scientists and the UK government, and in our legislation, let's not forget. And burning oil and gas in new fields, which is what she's saying, would take us massively past those limits. So, from that perspective alone, I think it's a no-goer, and I think that her sort of desperate attempt to copycat Nigel Farage is not really going to work for her.
Well, there's no doubt that's exactly what she's doing. Although many would say, look, even if we didn't do any drilling, even under the current government and their plans to continue up to a certain point, we'd still be past the limits that you allude to, right? Globally, we'd be past those limits because, other countries, I know mentioning China has become the sort of get out of jail card, and I know you've got a ready-baked answer for that one, Hannah. But nonetheless, you take my point that there is clearly this is a global story. We can't examine the damage that you refer to in isolation. So we're going to go past it anyway.
I mean, I agree with you. It's a global story. I think we are part of that global story. And I think, it's one of those cases where, in my opinion, I don't really feel good about being part of a country that says, no, we're actually just going to sit this one out. We don't think, to me, that doesn't sit with the tradition of being a British citizen that I was brought up in, which is to care for our neighbours, to care for our communities, to care about what happens in the future. To, I have a daughter, I have a 1-year-old. I don't really want to think about what might happen to her if we just do nothing. And so I think we need to keep on the same trajectory we're on, which is, you know, a good trajectory. I'm not here to say everything's doom and gloom, but I do think that this particular announcement from the Conservative Party really takes them backwards. It's sort of going back to old stuff that I don't think is going to work and I don't think is going to be effective.
Can we not do both? Is it not possible in the same way? I mean, just to bring China back into this, that China are, you know, the greatest per square metre or square kilometre, whatever, place on Earth in terms of wind farm success is China. Solar panels is China. Simultaneously, the greatest amount of furnaces that are knocking out guff into the atmosphere is also China. They seem to be working on the very simple basis that, yeah, we'll bring on the new technology. It can run parallel with what we've currently got, and we're not going to waste all of that. We'll run with it. No one's going to die, you know. Yeah, there'll be a few changes to the temperature. Mother Nature is far stronger than anything we can knock out of a chimney. So, you know, we'll run with it for a bit. It'll be fine. And that seems to be their line. Could we not run a similar line to that?
Well, the thing is that I think in terms of the North Sea, why would we do that, right? People say it's to increase our energy security, but actually that basin in the North Sea is extremely mature. So that means we've burned a lot of the gas there already. It's basically only oil left, which we export mostly. So it's not going to increase or like decrease our reliance on foreign imports in the gas market. So it's not going to kind of create the energy security that we might get, say, from properly investing in the offshore wind industry. You know, we're described as like the Saudi Arabia of wind because, you know, it's very windy. You look outside, it's always windy. And so I think that we have a potential option, maybe other countries don't in the same way, to move away from fossil fuels, which won't increase our energy security, will take us on a pathway, you know, to climate temperatures that we don't really want to hit, and won't necessarily even lower our energy bills as well. So I think for me, it's a question of, well, why would we go down that route when we have other options available to us?
I mean, in terms of just a final point on where we're at and the destruction of the planet and all those arguments, I know you feel very passionately about this. When I look back, I'm probably a couple of weeks or months older than you, Hannah, it might surprise you to know, but when I look back to my childhood, and you've probably had the same experience in the time that we've both been on the planet, our country now is unrecognisable when it comes to environmental considerations. The way we build roads, the kind of cars we drive, the way we recycle, the way that big buildings are constructed, the way we heat homes. I mean, we're in another stratosphere. It's unrecognisable from where it was. Certainly when I was a kid in the 80s, it didn't look like this at all. Nobody gave a toss about what happened. Well, I say they didn't. Nobody knew about it. These conversations weren't live. There were probably one or two stragglers at the back that were going, look, excuse me, I think we need to change things. But broadly speaking, it's unrecognisable. How has it got worse when we've all got so much better?
Well, I don't necessarily think it has got worse in many ways in terms of our lived experience of those changes. I mean, yeah, I grew up in Wakefield in a very, very uninsulated old vicarage building where my poor brother was like shivering, you know, to get to sleep in a room that had no insulation. You know, I think it would have been great to have had a subsidy to, you know, insulate those windows and sort us out a little bit. And so you're right to say that things have improved in terms of people's access to public transport, people's access potentially to nature around them. All of these things are good things. I don't necessarily think we have to stop. Why can't we continue on that trajectory of improving things? I think that is the government's job, is to think about what are the challenges facing the current generations that they are responsible for and accountable to, and we've elected them to do that, and for future generations as well. And I think those are the terms on which they should be making these decisions. OK, listen, Hannah, lovely to talk. Thank you for coming on with us. Hannah Martin, co-founder of Green New Deal Rising. Your thoughts on what you heard there? Don't need to drill, and even if we did drill and get all the oil up, it ain't going to make a scintilla of difference to our bills, she says. Thoughts on that, and also our security in terms of where we get our energy from. That's the argument from that side of things. You heard Fraser Myers earlier with the opposite. 0344 499 1000.
politicians.
No, because she's in the news more because she's a very flamboyant, colourful character. And frankly, this bunch of complete sort of, you know, they look like accountants, but sadly not that competent. She stands out. Everyone knows who she is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 2 on Talk. Let's talk about Father Ted creator Graeme Linehan. Rarely out the headlines, and usually for reasons around this area. But he's explained that he was arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow over a series of, quote, anti-trans tweets. This happened just yesterday. The Irish comedy writer, arriving from a 10-hour flight from Arizona, claims he was treated like a terrorist as soon as he stepped off the plane. He said he was questioned and released with a bail condition banning him from using X. Let's speak with Connie Shaw, External Affairs Officer at the Free Speech Union, joins us in the studio. I mean, this is, in a bizarre way, Connie, I'm not... Like, if you read this story 10 years ago, I saw somebody write this online. You just assume this was... Somebody had made it up. A bloke in the pub told you about a fella that had said something about a man in a dress, and suddenly 5 coppers arrested him. You go, that's not true. You heard what Mick's been saying in the pub. He's full of the old BS, Mick. He's making stuff up. This is where we're at now, so I'm actually not surprised to read this.
This is just another day. Well, only the second day in phase 2 of Keir Starmer's Britain.
Phase 2, there it is again.
Phase 2. And it seems it's almost just as bad as phase 1 when it comes to free speech. And of course, he likes to go on about how we've always had free speech in this country and we always will. We're very proud of it. But no, it seems to be a consistent pattern of bad faith actors reporting people for what they find offensive. Then the police actually arrest these people. I mean, if I was a police officer and this was what I was being told to do, I don't think I could do it. Imagine 5 armed police officers as soon as he steps off his flight. I mean, that is being treated like a terrorist. He was detained for 16 hours and then they released him when they had to take him to A&E because his blood pressure was so high, they were concerned he might have a stroke. As far as I'm aware, Graeme is doing okay now. Obviously not great, but he's not under too much...
Has he tweeted since?
No, because otherwise he'd break his bail conditions. He could be arrested again.
Are you allowed to even set that as a bail condition?
Well, it was the same with our other member, Robert Moss, who, when he was released...
remind us what happened with Robert Moss.
Robert Moss, he was had the police banging on his front door at 7 a.m. after he had criticised his former employer on a private Facebook group, and he was taken to the police, to the... what's it called? Police station.
Police station, yes. Yeah, that's where the police live.
Had his DNA taken, his photo taken, his fingerprints taken, and when he was released on bail, he was told, you're not allowed to talk about the fact you've been arrested. And the FSU gave him a barrister, and we overturned those bail conditions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that... You know, I reckon the fella that runs North Korea will be going, blimey, we don't go that far. I mean, it's extraordinary.
And of course, these 2 cases aren't the only ones. You also had Julian Fawkes earlier in the year, who he was arrested and his house raided. The famous Brexity Books comment made about the Douglas Murray books and the Spectator that he had on his shelves.
That was a mistaken tweet as well, isn't it? They read incorrectly what he'd written.
We won him £20,000 back in compensation. There was also Maxie Allen and Rosalind Levine. They were arrested. They were detained for about 11 hours and were arrested by 11 police officers, detained by 6 hours. And we're also looking to get compensation for them as well. 30 people a day are arrested for offensive tweets.
I mean, this is extraordinary. And it's funny, you go back to the guy who wrote something... and I forgot his name now, you just alluded to him, the one whose house was raided.
Julian Fawkes.
Who was a former copper himself. It was his own police force. Former police
that was
force.
The same with Robert Moss. It was he used to work in the fire service. It was the fire service that complained about him. that ended up being...
it's just extraordinary. And these cases, what's with the raiding of the house, for God's sake?
Well, that's another pattern. They seize their devices. So Robert had to go out and buy his own devices again. I don't know how what devices Graham's using at the moment to post on Substack, but his devices have been seized as well.
I mean, this is just beyond kind of anything you could make up. It's firmly in very sinister territory, Connie. I mean, this is no longer like, you know, whether you first read one of these stories, you go, look, it was an overactive inspector at a police station that thought there was going to be a riot so they nipped it in the bud. You might have just found a very tenuous defence as to what might have... But there's so many of these cases now that it's no longer that.
I know, and that's why I can't believe some people who continue to say that the idea that there's a free speech crisis in this country is a right-wing dog whistle or a dog whistle of any kind, when they are simply ignoring what's going on in front. I mean, this story has gone around the world in a matter of hours. Elon Musk is now aware of it. J.K. Rowling is retweeting it all. Everyone knows about it. Twitter is flooded with it. And sadly, obviously, Graham can't tell us what's going on.
Who's behind all of it? Because, I mean, I know there's a big thing to talk about Starmer and his, thing, but this predates Keir Starmer, of course. So these cases were going on way before this.
Yeah, well, there is a pattern of some very litigious trans activists who will go after Graham for the rest of his life, it seems. They won't leave him alone, like he hasn't suffered enough for speaking his mind. And they are just people who want to ruin his life, simply because he thinks that women should be able to have single-sex spaces and children shouldn't be told that they're born in the wrong body. And it's just devastating to see the fact that he was already on his way, that he was coming back to the UK because he has a trial at the end of this week for other charges for something else to do with trans activists. And so it just seems like a never-ending nightmare, and I only wish that at some point Graham finds some sort of peace and he's left alone for once.
One of the things he wrote was, if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene. Call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. That was one of the things he said. I think most people would say that's kind of fair enough, and the police would have perhaps gone, well, maybe it was the punch him in the balls bit. It was a call to violence.
Well, I think it has to be so narrow to say that something's a call to violence. We also need to remember that Graham is a comedy writer. That is he's lost all of his work in the UK because he's spoken out about this. Things he say are not always literal. He's the most gentle, the kindest man, one of the kindest men I've ever met. There is no way that he would actually advocate violence.
Of course
he's making a statement, and this is the thing that people say, oh, he's mean to trans people. No, he's talking about men here. Men who encroach on women's spaces need to be told no, and women are at their last tether. Despite the fact that the law is on our side now, men are still coming in to women's spaces, and universities and workplace aren't upholding it.
Just finally, a comment from Kemi Badenoch on this. She says, this is the statement from her, sending 5 officers to arrest a man for a tweet isn't policing, it's politics. Under Labour, we routinely see burglary, knife crime and assaults go unsolved, while resources are wasted on thought policing. It is time this government told the police their job is to protect the public, not monitor social media or for hurty words. The government would stop this nonsense on day one and make public safety... the Conservatives, rather, would stop this nonsense on day one and make public safety the first duty of policing instead of pandering to fringe ideologies. What do we make of that final word, Connie?
I mean, it's great, but obviously these issues did exist under the Conservative government. There were issues, but it's since Labour has been in power, it seems like all of a sudden it has been an absolute avalanche. And something has to happen. I don't care who does it, but something... I mean, just having the training of police, when they get these reports, does not one of them think, maybe this isn't, like I said, if I was a police officer, I couldn't possibly do it. I said, I'm not going armed to Heathrow to go and arrest Graeme Linehan for a tweet.
Wasn't there a guy, a copper, I've got to be very brief on this, Connie, but wasn't there a copper recently who was told to go around to somebody's house and tell them about, the fact that we're going to a protest the next day? He was caught on a doorbell.
Yeah, he was so embarrassed.
Actually said,
I'm sorry.
The copper went, really sorry about this, it's ridiculous, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And I think the copper got in trouble for that, but there we go. Connie, great to have you with us, thank you. Connie Shaw with us on the programme, External Affairs Officer for the Free Speech Union. Just gone 2:30, this is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 3 on a Tuesday afternoon. It's nearly Christmas, by the way, folks. Just thought I'd remind you of that. Kids go back to school this week, different days in different parts of the country. I'm sure some have already gone, actually. And that's the point when everything starts to look festive. I know a bit of Halloween thrown in for good measure. Chocolate Santas in the supermarkets already. Tinsel hanging low in some places too. We ramp up towards the festive season. But do you know what? The headlines that bother us keep on coming. Santa or no Santa. More than 1,000 homes are lying empty because the building safety regulator isn't allowing people to move in. This sounds like all shades of insane. Construction has also stalled on more than 35,000 properties, with fewer than a third of new builds approved within the government's 12-week target. Developers warn that red tape and delays are pushing up costs, making projects unviable and leaving families waiting for homes that should already be ready. Let's speak with Jamie Lester, estate agent at House Properties. Good afternoon to you, Jamie.
Afternoon, Ian.
Is this a classic case of, is it's bureaucracy that's the problem here rather than bricks?
Absolutely. The red tape is horrendous that these developers are caught up in. You sort of opened the segment and talked about Christmas is around the corner.
Yeah.
I kid you not, I have sold apartments. These are built, beautiful apartments in London, ready to move into. I sold these apartments 15 months ago for them to move in really within 28 days. Buying a new home, you can usually transact within a month or two. They still haven't moved in, and I cannot tell them if they're going to move in before Christmas.
Wow. So what's the reason for that? What's the specific hold-up here?
So the government have introduced new legislations and new sort of gateways for developers to perform into. And in this instance, the BSR, the Building Safety Regulator, that has been set up as a government initiative, they are simply ill-equipped. They were given the powers to sign buildings off, and they simply do not have the manpower to follow through. There is absolutely zero commercial sense from the BSR to understand the delays that are causing, not just from, the property developer I'm representing are hemorrhaging £100,000 a week in holding costs just to keep this block empty. We've had buyers that they obtained a mortgage offer 15 months ago. They've expired. But if we cast our mind back, what happened, not 15 months ago, but 15 months ago, stamp duty was very different to what it is today. So buyers who purchased a property knowing their stamp duty bill 15 months ago, today, in some cases, has doubled.
And will they have to pay that extra?
Of course. I have no doubt that the government will not say, we understand that you purchased it 15 months ago, it's our fault, we will delay, we will go back to the old stamp duty bill.
Wow.
No way.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to take that on legally, it's going to take you about 4 years in courts and God knows how many costs.
It won't happen, no. Yeah. So I have buyers who, and this is the odd part, I have buyers, they're not being told by the BSR how long all this will take. And so they're kind of in no man's land. They don't know, they can't take a long-term lease because, of course, if they do get sign off, the developer and they will want to move in straight away, so they can't break their lease. They then face Airbnb, which of course is very, very expensive. I have families who they were buying their first home, so couples coming together, they haven't moved in either. The whole thing is a real problem, and I can also tell you that if it was a commercial building control officer, not government signing this, but if it was a commercial, someone who understood the nuances of the commercial and the commercial viability of this, it would have been signed off in 8 weeks.
Yeah, indeed. And if it wasn't, somebody would lose their job, right? You go, hang on, you're not fit for purpose, get out.
And how often have we heard that about our government?
Yeah, if you work for the government, you've got to commit second-degree murder to lose your job, and even then, I think you get a verbal warning in the first place.
No comment on that.
Indeed, it's a crazy situation. Jamie, thank you for your time. I hope it does improve and accelerate. What an extraordinary state of affairs! Not buildings stalled not by bricks but by bureaucracy. In the case that we're discussing, or the cases we're discussing there with Jamie Lester, estate agent at House Properties. Thank you to him. Back to your calls. A lot of reaction as well on Graeme Linehan. This is Pav in Harrow. What have you got for us, Pav? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. It seems to be, if it's not something political, it seems to be something social.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost gives succor to those social media folks who want to present a mendacious picture of the United Kingdom abroad, because frankly, this is indefensible. I mean, the biggest problem here, Ian, and I mean, you alluded to earlier the sort of phrases such as, prisoner of thought or prisoner of conscience, as some of the left call it. And this is the dark sort of terrain that we're heading into. What I do find slightly amusing with this all is the way that the Conservatives, Jenrick and Badenoch's name but two, have quickly come out and suggested that this is, dystopia, 101, etc. When, of course, a lot of this had its foundation and indeed germinated under their tenure. If people have forgotten, the hate speech laws came in 2015, and as I regularly used to say to your late colleague, Mr. Whale, one of the problems with that is essentially it is allowing subjective victim testimony, which in normal parlance means that it allows anybody to make an allegation, consequently putting the alleged perpetrator on the back foot simply by the allegation. That was a complete volte-face of what the previous various centuries of the legal system in this country had entailed, where it involved, investigation as a result of an allegation, and then, a more transparent, shall we say, method of charging. The really dark aspect of this, Ian, is that, and I've said on your show before that the way that, the whole woke ideas and everything else have basically killed comedy. But this in itself, is clearly going to raise suspicions, not least because the broad group that he alluded to is so broad. It's not as though it's specific. It's not as though, for example, he said, hypothetically, let's do this to MPs or let's do this to talk radio staff, a very specific group.
Yeah.
This was such a broad group, and normally speaking, I'm not saying it's a defence, but that's enough to turn around and ensure that the legal threshold of any sort of, whether it's custody, interrogation, anything you want to say is breached. Here, it clearly hasn't been. What concerns me the most, Ian, is we will talk about this probably today, tomorrow, and then another story will doubtless come up with phase 2, Mr. Starmer and his government, no doubt probably come up this evening. But what I find really disconcerting, Ian, and other people should, is when these sorts of incidents happen, why do the chief constables and ultimately the Home Secretary get off scot-free? Because at the end of the day, these officers, whoever they are, however ill-intentioned they may have acted or however reasonably they may have thought they were acting, they are acting under orders. And for whatever reason, accountability is a thing. We had but 3 years ago the newspapers telling us every day that parties going on in number 10 should be held accountable to the guy at the top, which ultimately resulted in him going. Well, why is it different then when it comes to the police, when ultimately, as I've said, the chief constables or the Home Secretary have those officers and really should be doing it. And here's the other point, and I put up a tweet a while ago, and the BBC unfortunately deleted the clip. It was yesterday when Emily Thornberry, or Lady Nugent, as we like to call her, put up a claim suggesting that we weren't North Korea. I'm afraid, Ian, the way things are going, it's very difficult to argue that these isles shouldn't be renamed the DPUK. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we can have some jokes about it, but until freedom of expression is given the necessary and wide ambit, everything except where you're inciting violence against others, then I'm afraid these things are going to continue to happen. And God forbid if something had happened to him in custody, what on earth would have happened? But this is the problem, Ian. As soon as people give up their freedom of expression, as we have in this country, not freedom of speech like in the States, as soon as someone says to you can't say that, well, every time you do that, you cede a portion of your freedom of expression. Then it's probably not a good thing to lament when people in government and elsewhere with the levers of power want to take it away from you personally and perennially.
Bang on. Listen, and there's a warning there on your final word, Pav. Thank you very much indeed for that. Pav in Harrow, reference the Graeme Linehan story, getting arrested by 5 armed cops. The Met Police said the arrest was made by officers from the MPS Aviation Unit. It is routine for officers policing airports to carry firearms. They were not drawn or used at any point during the arrest. I think, all right, I get it. OK, if they're going to carry out an arrest at an airport, the chances are the police officer is going to be armed. 5 of them? 5? I don't know whether his house was raided, but he certainly there's talk that his electronic devices were seized. I mean, his devices were seized. I mean, what the hell do they think they're dealing with? Quite seriously, what level of threat do they believe Graeme Linehan is going to present to real life rather than some kind of digital agitation that's going on with a few people on Twitter? Really? We've got to seize his digital devices, taken away in plastic evidence bags. For what? For what? It's not the first example, of course. I think Connie Shaw just told us 30 people a day are getting authorities having a word in their shell like because of stuff they've posted on social media. I get it. If you want to put a tweet out there saying, anyone want to help me kill my noisy neighbour, Janice, who lives at 68 Arcacia Avenue, meet me at 6 o'clock and bring your own crossbow. Yeah, that might be something that we have to take a little more serious. You know, I mean, these are... Social media is no longer a kind of little sort of side dish issue. It's something much bigger now, OK? It's a kind of like a parallel communication verse of life. So, yeah, if you're going to write that, I get it. I understand that, of course. But we're not dealing with that. And one look at this, and you would think, you know, I can't imagine the average burly cop that I meet. And when you meet an armed officer, I know this is not, it's a bit of a stereotype. They're usually slightly bigger in nature. I don't know why that is. I mean, you might say people who, you know, look as if they could intervene in a fight might well be more drawn to going into that. Well, I don't know. But I can't imagine those big burly guys, when you've got them in the Rose and Crown having a pint, saying, do you really think it was right that you nicked Graeme Linehan? I can't imagine them going, yeah, it was absolutely right, mate. Absolutely bang on. Yeah, he was bang to rights. He was saying stuff about men in dresses. You can't do that. And again, it comes back to the, if this was 10 years ago and somebody had told you this story, you would have simply said, I don't believe you. I honestly think you're making this up. You're making this shizzle up as you go. But here we are, and it's not an isolated incident. And then your bail conditions, I'm not absolutely sure this is legal, preclude you from going on social media. You're not allowed to go on social media. Seriously? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
I'd be depressed if I was going to be deported because I supported a prescribed terrorist group. I think that's a rather silly thing to have done. But I think, honestly, the fact that we have this drip feeding of stories, and it's almost every day that we have a story of an example of somebody not being able to be deported because of some very silly reason. There was the example, wasn't there, the other day of the Pakistani gentleman who had broken the law several times and was going to be deported, but he can't be deported to Pakistan because he is an alcoholic and alcohol is banned in Pakistan. And you were sat there going, oh, for heaven's sake.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One here from Hayley in Carshalton who says, when I was a kid, I'm 62 now, we used to say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. The world is now ridiculous. Yes, they have an overreaction on words, but law-breaking illegal immigrants can do what they want to with free board and lodgings and lots more besides. We should have zero tolerance, all out and no more in. Give our rights back to the British. It's a great point. Gary says, all of the measures announced by Yvette Cooper yesterday that she claims will help to deal with the illegal migrant crisis could have been announced within days of Labour getting elected into office after 14 months ago. So you have to wonder why, if she really believes that they'll be so effective, she's waited so long to introduce them. I mean, they had a lot of time to carve out a policy, didn't they? I mean, they had years, literally, in opposition. The truth is the government isn't moving into phase 2, it's lurching into panic mode. Number 10 recognises that its flagship policy of smashing the gangs has crashed and burned, so the policy wonks have gone into overdrive, looking for headline grabbers to shore up the government's credibility on this issue. But the reality is Farage has already parked his tanks on Starmer's lawns on all matters immigration, and the reform tail is now starting to wag the government dog. Absolutely right, and there's no way back on that. Just before we go back to the calls, we've got a brand new voice of doom. It's day one. Last one only went on for 2 days, for God's sake. This one, I reckon, is going to go on for 2 years. I think this is tricky. It's a political mystery voice. Who is this?
In this next election.
Oh, I don't know. Now I've heard it out loud in my lugholes. Here it is again.
In this next election.
Who's that then? 87222, don't phone, just message if you want to have a crack. 87222. If somebody gets it correct, we'll tell you who it is after the news. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Here it is again.
In this next election.
87222. Back to your calls. This is Russell in Somerset. Russell, what have you got for us? Hi.
Well, just going back to Yvette Cooper and Starmer, I don't think they like this country. If you go to the States, everybody moans about Trump and Vance, but they put their country first.
Yep.
They put their heart and soul into it.
Mm-hmm.
Not like here, we just have to roll over our bellies tickle. But
seems that way, doesn't it?
It does. It's not right. It needs to change. So hopefully it might do if Farage gets in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people are hoping for, isn't it? And it's kind of interesting that, you know, the establishment, for want of a better word, are still kind of scratching their head about this kind of Farage character and these reform people, and surely not. They got 5 MPs and they couldn't run in a brewery. But they are massively ahead in every single opinion poll. And if there was an election tomorrow, they would win it, Russell. Which bit of that do you think the government don't understand?
I don't think it's done all of it. I think it's so blind to it. We've got the same as, like you say, we had 2 Jags. What's the old 2 Jags, man? We've got bloody 3 properties reigning, haven't we?
2 Jags to 3 properties. Love it, Russell. Thank you very much indeed for that. Gary is in Kent. Gary, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hello, Ian. Yes, 2 points, both rooted in comedy, which is often a good way of highlighting things. Yeah. The first was a stand-up I saw, and he was sort of saying, isn't it funny how when you get like a dictatorship, when they put someone inside as a political prisoner, they make up some convoluted description, and these people were, it's not a journalist, they were pen pushers distorting the public opinion.
Yes, yeah, or a spy or something.
Spy, yeah, or they're agitators of the common view, and you think, what does that mean? But it must mean something, so bang up. Whereas when you saw over here, people get put inside for a tweet or some stickers or praying silently outside of an abortion clinic, they get arrested, and then Keir Starmer just says, "Oh no, we've got free speech." He doesn't even make up a long, convoluted saying. It's like the dictator is sort of saying, "Is that all it took? Just outright denial?"
Exactly. Yeah, he's gone where Kim Jong-un couldn't go or wouldn't go.
At least he's gone to the effort of making up some reason why he's inside.
Yeah, no, we got free speech.
Free speech and bang you up anyway.
Yes.
That was the point one.
Someone convincing you that wall really is black when it's blue.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, last week I called in, I was making that analogy between 40 Towers and Basil making that big speech in the final thing. And he goes off, instead of addressing the individual complaints of the people, starts going on about values and, here in Britain we value things more. Exactly what we got yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, case in point, Yvette Cooper going on about our flags represent this and the way that, rather than address how they would get rid of the close the house.
I mean, it's kind of
people would go.
And this kind of way of governing is. This is the bit that I don't understand. You wonder who the advisors are, because if I was advising Yvette Cooper, I would be. The first thing I would say is, like, firstly, none of that's going to work. It's not going to wash. All right, it might sound like you're a very neat and tidy, confident speaker, but that's all, because it's very clipped and precise, isn't it? All the words she doesn't trip over her words, she delivers it pitch perfect. But the content is horrific. I mean, it's so, it's the sort of thing they were doing in 1997, and they're still doing it, and it didn't work through the Tory years, and now we expect a different type of politician, I think, and that's what.
And yesterday, we all sat round the radio yesterday like a family in the war here, sitting around their sunburst,
waiting for the big announcement. Oh, the Home Secretary is going to speak, kids.
And you get nothing back, So.
Nothing at all. Gary, great call again. Thank you very much indeed for that. Nigel says, I once had my electronic devices seized by the police under suspicion of making threats online, which all came to nothing. It took me 2 years to get them back from the force, and many personal photos and files have been erased. When I got my property back, the police officer denied it with a smirk on his face. I mean, this kind of stuff, that it was under the Tories, the non-crime hate incidents that kind of came in was that it would have been just after Cameron's entering number 10. I think it was the College of Policing that kind of originally came up with that. Keir Starmer, I remember he said quite recently that he supports this idea that, of police forces keeping some data on iffy individuals. But he did say on tweets, didn't he, years ago, was it when he was still DPP or was it when he was an MP? But either way, previously to becoming Prime Minister, he had said if somebody puts a tweet out and they've got it wrong, then they can take it down, don't be prosecuting people for that, or words to that effect. We'll try and find that clip. Shirley is in Manchester. Shirley, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. I've listened to loads of those discussions you've had on Talk with climate change people and people that want to stop any form of alternative energy like gas, oil, fracking. And the one thing that they don't mention that actually ruins the planet is plastic. And at one time, maybe about 5-6 years ago, it was like a big headline, wasn't it? Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall did a thing about plastics. And I think Jamie Oliver did. But the point is, none of them mention it. And the reason is, if you mention it, it becomes a problem. And if you mention it, it's something that needs to go away. And they can't make it go away. So when the wind turbines come, what are they wrapped in? How are they actually sent across the globe? What about the solar panels? What are they wrapped in? Loads and loads of plastic.
Yeah.
But nobody ever mentions that when the death of the planet is nigh.
Well, there's quite a lot of plastics and nonsense all over the place that nobody mentions. You're quite right. Shirley, thank you very much indeed for that. I stopped because the news is upon us. Voice of Doom answer, I hope, coming up after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And what have we got going on at this end? Well, quite a bit, actually. Pretty rammed. Loads of subjects going on. And, of course, big opinion from you as well. In particular, Labour admitting no channel migrants have been returned to France over their one-in, one-out policy. Current stats say it's about 3,900 in and zero, quite literally, zero out. This comes as Home Secretary Yvette Cooper promises tighter family reunion rules and accelerated closures of asylum hotels. All those people have got to go somewhere else after that. This really doesn't get anywhere near solving any of the overarching problems. However, benefit of the doubt territory, we're all about free speech. Can Labour finally deliver on immigration? It's a genuine question. What's your answer? 0344 499 1000. As you were hearing earlier, the British countryside is overwhelmingly white and needs more halal food, according to academics who argue rural England needs to make sustained inclusion efforts for ethnic minorities. Did you ever hear such tosh in your life? The countryside is open to anyone, and certainly where I live, if I go for a mooch around the countryside, taking the dog for a walk, I meet all manner of people around there. It's amazing who pops out of a bush when you're on a country walk. And experts warn e-cigarettes should be banned worldwide to protect children, saying vaping can raise the risk of stroke, asthma and heart problems and could do even more damage to developing brains and hearts. We'll have more on that story too. Everything that you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news as well, right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. So the voice of doom. Have we got a winner? Let me remind you of the voice we played you just before the news. Day one, brand new voice. It's the political mystery voice. This is who we played you.
In this next election.
Who's that? Some of the guesses. Leanne Wood. Was she the Green Party person? I think so. Liz Truss, Justin Greening, Rebecca Long-Bailey. No, it's none of those. Bridget Phillipson, Angela Eagle, Lisa Nandy, Nadine Dorris, Caroline Lucas. None of them. However, rather annoyingly, on day one, we've got a winner. The answer was Hazel Blears. Hazel Blears, former Communities Secretary in the Brown government. I did go to her office once to interview her. She was a very nice lady. I think she rode a motorbike as well, which made her slightly different. Hazel Blears was the right answer. Well done to... Well, it's only pesky Gary that's gone and done it, or certainly got through. But was it just Gary, or was he the first through, Adam? Just Gary. Just Gary. I thought that was going to go on for a bit longer, which means we have a brand new Voice of Doom tomorrow at around about the same time. Now, the British countryside is overwhelmingly white and needs more to address that issue. Halal food and space for prayers. There's an example. That's according to academics from the University of Leicester who say ethnic minorities face a psychological burden navigating rural areas where traditional pubs and customs are seen as exclusionary. Wow. The report recommends increasing cultural facilities and dietary options to make rural England more inclusive. Let's speak to Gareth Wynne-Jones, a farmer who knows this terrain like no one else. Gareth, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, not rural England, rural Wales.
I was about to say, yeah, you're right in the smack bang middle of a beautiful part of the United Kingdom. It looks gorgeous there, even though we're moving into autumn. I mean, have you ever heard the like, Gareth? I mean, your countryside, like England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, wherever, we're open to everyone, right?
Yeah, it's just more craziness, isn't it? You know, they're just looking for any excuse to portray as the indigenous people as not welcoming to anybody. But you know, if you go to our next village just across over here called Abergwyngraegin, and people from Manchester, Birmingham, you know, a lot of Asian people come up there. It's a beautiful waterfall, there's fantastic cafes, and it's a great spot for people. You know, they come, they spend, they enjoy themselves, and That's what it's about. We are an open community. As long as people come and respect the countryside, close gates, take the litter home, park responsibly, especially in farmers' gateways. Honestly, we've had a few problems this summer that I've been swearing.
Yes, don't park in front of a big gate that is meant to have 200 sheep coming out of it the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. But I mean, the interesting thing as well, whether it's Welsh or English, whatever, I mean, there are certain traditions. Like, if you go to a local village, you just alluded to one there, there will be certain sort of nods to the fact that there's a history here. No, we shouldn't be changing that, should we? We shouldn't be trying to pretend that it's not a Welsh village or it's not an English village. I mean, those things should be celebrated.
Yeah, definitely celebrated. My phone just fell off the little...
That's all right, we can hear you, we can hear you loud and clear, Gareth.
Yeah, so my family's been on the same farm for 375 years, and like I say, there's traditions around here, and we have a lot of American tourists up, and they love listening to the Welsh language, listening to the culture, listening to the heritage, to the stories, and we should embrace that. And we should be celebrating that. We shouldn't be hiding it and pretending that we're something that we're not. And people that come here want to see it. They want to listen to it. They want to understand it. And I think that's the important thing. It's having a balance and having, a celebration of what we do, not be embarrassed about our past. Be proud of it.
100%. Farming has had a little bit of a bashing over the last year or so, Gareth, or I'm sure it goes back longer than that, but you take the point. How is the industry? Your family, you've almost got 4 centuries of doing it, for goodness sake. Is it tougher than it's ever been?
Yeah, it's one of the toughest times I can remember. I'm 58, and I think, the last 12 months and the previous government didn't do us any favours, to be honest. I just don't want to point the finger just at Labour, but it's not easy. Supermarket pushing prices down, government legislation, inheritance tax. We've got TB problems here with an overpopulation of badgers. And the sad thing is nobody's listening, and, we've got food inflation going through the roof. Yeah. We've had one of the driest years imaginable, where crops are down, people are struggling now for grass, silage, hay, straws going through the roof. Our costs are going up, and lamb and beef are selling well, but at the end of the day you haven't got much left. And if they're expecting 20% off our inheritance tax when my old man cokes it and a few other people, leave this earth, the money won't be there for many, many farms. No. And that's the sad reality. They'll have to sell that land then, where it will make the business less, they won't be able to pay their way, and they will most probably come out of the industry.
Well, that was
and I'll tell you something, there is a lot of farmers selling up and pulling out, and, these people are at the backbone of the British culture, and they need to be protected.
You brilliantly described it there, the problem with this inheritance tax thing. I keep seeing sort of, I don't know, daft, squealing lefties online saying, why shouldn't farmers pay a fair tax? Of course, it's not about, trousering some extra cash so you can go and buy yourself a new Porsche. It's about a business, isn't it? It's about the legacy of the business. It's passed down. You're a living example.
And keeping food affordable. Don't forget, we're the people that are putting
You're
food
supplying
on people's
food,
places.
You're not supplying stuffed toys for a fairground. You're supplying part of the backbone of our infrastructure in that respect, and a crucial one. Yeah,
and we get a 1% return on our capital. There's no other business does what we do, working 24/7, trying to keep food affordable. Yeah, look, we're never going to be multimillionaires. We just want to make a good living, but keep people fed with good, nutritious, wholesome, affordable food. And that's what government should be looking at. They should be absolutely backing British agriculture and the countryside to make sure
the food securities at the top. But they don't care, they don't understand, and they are sleepwalking into food shortages and into food inflation. And the sad reality is they should be protecting the poorer people in this nation, but it's the poorer people in this nation that'll suffer because they won't be able to afford good, nutritious food.
Spot on. Listen, it's great to have you on. Really appreciate your time, Gareth. Enjoy the rest of the day. Those days, I know, in your profession are long, they are tough, they don't stop no matter what the hell the weather's doing. What a great point he made there at the end. I think the problem that so many people, Terry Christian is always getting animated about things like this on social media, gets very, very angry. Oh, look, you got 250 acres, you know, we're all crying for you. You know, those examples of people, there'd probably be a great documentary on people who are property rich but cash poor, who found themselves living in a, you know, because it was their mum's house or their dad's house or both, and they're in a, you know, a pretty tasty place. It's worth a few quid. They don't really want to move, but they haven't got any great income either. And it's kind of like, if you look at farming, if this is the best analogy, I'm sure there are better ones. Farming is kind of like that. I mean, he talks about 1% profits. I mean, it's so hard to make ends meet. And yes, there is a lot of land there. And yes, it is if you valued it and went, oh, this is worth, you know, £5 million or even £50 million. It's only worth that if you sell it to somebody. The fact that you die and leave it to your son or daughter who continue to... The selling bit is not a factor in this because they're not being sold, they're just being continued. And of course, what makes them exclusive in this argument is they're providing food, milk and meat and vegetables. I mean, that's, you know, a pretty unique... It's not just a niche area, it's, you know, pretty crucial to the cogwheels of making the country function. But as for back to where it started, the academics at Leicester University who says there should be, like, you know, more halal meat. I mean, what do you want to see? An imam on a donkey going through a village? Should you get I don't know, you know, do you want more Sikh shepherds? Is that how it is? I don't sense Christianity either when I go through the countryside. I don't go, oh, this feels very Christian. What I do see when I go to a nice archetypal English, or in the case of Gareth, Welsh village, is I get a bit of the culture and the history of that place. Now, that shouldn't be changed. What, do you want to change that? Hey, Gareth said his family have been farming for nearly 4 centuries. 4 centuries. I want to see that history reflected. I don't want somebody ticking diversity boxes, going, right, we're going to get all the religions, all the colours, all the creeds, get it all represented. How? In what way? William is in North Ayrshire on this very point. Good afternoon, William.
Good afternoon, Ian. Can I just thank you and your staff and your production team for giving me this opportunity. I was wanting to really, my main focus was on rural. I struggle because as a Scotsman, try to say rural. It's about rural racism. Yeah. But you mentioned something about university. Can I just put a wee thing on university?
Yeah, please.
Anything that comes out of university, take it with a pinch of salt.
That's usually the best.
Every single thing that they come out with is.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll go back onto the... we'll call it a countryside racism because as a Scottishman, it's hard to say rural. This is just another way, just putting the big boot down on us because they don't take into the equation of the demographics of people that live in the countryside, and especially up here in Scotland, Ian, because well, I'm sure you've seen the Humza Yousaf video about this white, he's white, he's that white, and it didn't tell the people that, by the way, 1% of the Scottish population is non-white. So this is just a part of the way. They're just trying to grind you down. All they're doing is trying to grind you down, stifle your comments, stifle your way of life, and just try to put it in your head that see your way of life. That's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
Same way as you touched on farms. That's not the way of life anymore. The way of life is we're going to teach you a new way of life. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, but it's weird, and you're right. You're absolutely right. What you said at the beginning on this one, William, in that, you know, generally speaking, a few bored academics who've got nothing better to do other than come up with a load of old trash and nonsense because they know that people like us are going to talk about it and get very annoyed about it. You're right. Your best rule of thumb is to ignore it. William, you've been great. Thank you very much indeed for that. William in North Ayrshire. Russell is in Cardiff. Russell, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Hi. What are your thoughts?
One thing I'd like to say to you and all your viewers, I'm 69 and I think, am I going nuts? What's going on in this country?
Yeah.
My grandparents and we had family. I'm an ex-server myself in the military forces. What's going on in this country? When I see our Prime Minister, this Prime Minister who stood on the steps at Downing Street and says, country first, party second.
Yeah. Kept saying that a lot, didn't he?
So many times, and I'm getting gaslit, and I'm thinking, am I going nuts?
Yeah.
And I say to my family members, my grandparents and all my relatives, they'd be chilling in their grave. They'd be chilling in their graves. I served. When I went abroad, we were told about cultures of different countries and everything. But we've got to accept other cultures there, and I think, am I going nuts? Or it's just like we're going woke, everything's going doolally.
Well, that's where we've been sent, isn't it, really? Down this kind of upside-down Pixar-type land of nonsensical guff.
And what I don't like, listen, I like straight people. I don't like people who say one thing and then they go against it. Hypocrisy. That's and Keir Starmer, he lied in front of Trump up in Scotland, saying his free speech and about the farmers and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He lied on Downing Street when he said, country first, party second. All I can see, every one of those cabinet ministers have all done something, gone against. And I'm thinking, the country's going nuts.
There's no country first, party second in this current administration. It is a lie to suggest there was. Maybe when they started out, they thought they could do, but that for whatever reason, they haven't. And, you know, we will see, obviously, the fruits of their labour in years to come. Russell, I've got to move for time, but thank you very much indeed for that. You want to join in? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
about some tinkering around family applications from asylum seekers. People actually are probably running out of patience to hear about any more asylum seekers, never mind their families. I think people are just sick of the whole concept of it, not because we are not, as a nation, pretty generous and wanting to help the world's most oppressed, but because this system has been so systematically abused and exploited that it's lost all credibility.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. Josh says, it's not just the food crisis. Where I live in Leighton Buzzard, there is absolutely no police presence. We desperately need it because we just don't have the resources to protect ourselves. This government needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Crazy times. Crazy times. Adam is in Sheffield. Adam, what have you got for us?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for taking my call.
That's all right.
I'd just like to say firstly, before I start, that thumbs up to you and your fellow presenters, because before I found Talk, I didn't think that I had a voice being a right-wing view. You know, you kind of, we're drowned out by the lefties. So, you know, to have a channel that thinks what I think is great. So, yeah, cheers.
That's good. That is good. Nice to hear as well. What are your thoughts on all of this going on today, Adam?
Well, there's three things. The first one is about Starmer. I mean, we know that he doesn't want to stop the boats because, as you said many times, his heart's not in it. He feels because of reform that he has to be seen to be doing something, but you could tell it's just half-arsed. So, and one of the reasons being, apart from his lifelong views, is that I think he's just lining himself up for a cushy job with the EU when he's booted out. So he doesn't want to upset...
It might well be as simple as that, right?
Yeah, I think that contributes to it. So he's lining himself for a cushy job when he's booted out, not if. So he doesn't want to, you know, upset the EU high cabal.
Yep.
So I think that's one point. The other thing is... what makes me angry as well is all the hypocrisy from the lefties about the flags. Now, I had a woman on my Facebook who was standing to be a Green councillor, and fair play to her for that. I mean, I don't agree with the Greens, but, you know, as you always say, we live in a democracy.
Yeah, fair dues.
But she kept, bizarrely, she kept on putting up sort of what I would say to be provocative and nonsense posts while trying to get elected. For example, saying that the flags on the motorway bridges and gantries were, and I quote, a health and safety hazard and a danger to other motorists.
Oh, really?
Exactly, yeah. Now, I mean, our little bit of cloth tied on the railings of a high bridge, what is not in anyone's visibility, is a danger to motorists, I'll never know. But the point that I pointed out to her, and a reply came there, none, by the way, was that seeming she's so concerned about the quite niche issue of health and safety on motorway bridges, I was surprised that there was no mention of it whatsoever when the green eco-loonies were literally dangling from these same gantries and bridges.
And one of them's doing 5 years in jail now for, for his misdemeanours.
Couldn't write it. No. But there was no mention of that whatsoever.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because they were the very voices that were defending, you know, stopping the, you know, the M25 or the M6 or whatever, because, you know, you had to do it to save the planet. It was perfectly fine then, but apparently not when you put a flag up.
Well, that's what I pointed out to her, and I said, is it only and I put it in quotes, is it only a health and safety issue and a danger to motorists when it's a view that you oppose?
Yeah. Fair point.
You know, that was far more disruptive and dangerous, and it shook the whole road. But no mention of that, of course. But you put a British flag up, and you're the worst person and the most dangerous person in the world. Apparently.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well put a bucket of cyanide over a bridge. You know,
yeah, exactly. But I think what the deeper point is a lot of the left wing, they sneer at our flag and they don't like it, but they don't want to explicitly say so.
Yeah, they don't want to say so, and it's a very odd. It's kind of strange how a flag would trigger someone when it's your country's flag. I mean, I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, that reaction wasn't out there.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah. They just don't want to say so because they don't want a bucket load on them. But I know people who openly admit that they don't like Britain and they don't like the British flag and all the rest of it, the arguments And okay, I don't agree with that view. I vehemently disagree with it, by the way. But it's a view and they're entitled to it. But it's the people who don't like the flag but don't want to say so. I wish they'd just be open about it.
And come out and say so. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? If they said, look, I don't feel patriotic, I don't really go big on kind of nation sort of status and God save the Queen. I'm fine with that. At least I'd know where they stand. But the sort of pretending it, I mean, Yvette Cooper going on the TV today, Adam, suggesting that her and Ed Balls have got, flags around their house. I mean, really? I'm not believing that in the old Balls Cooper Conservatory, it's lined with rosettes that are red, white and blue. Not a chance.
I mean, it's just like you said earlier. Who was advising them to say this stuff? Because it just comes across as so insincere and hollow.
Completely,
it's laughable.
Yep. Laughable indeed. Listen, Adam, thank you for your comments at the beginning. I've got to move just to get another comment on as well. Thank you for your call, Adam in Sheffield. David is in Exeter. Stage 2, or is it phase 2, David? What are you making of it all?
Oh, well, it looked like something off Austin Powers, didn't it? Stage 2, warm, liquid, socialist goo. We're going to have more political policing, more political judiciary, and more political justice. So clearly, that's where they're going with it.
That's where phase 2 is, right?
Well, looking at him, it looks something as well. Had it not been for the fact that we're in more or less a state of war, regardless of whether Starmer wants to tell the British public the truth.
Yeah.
But that's the you look at the government gilts have absolutely collapsed because the market can't be kidded for what they're doing. But I think what's got to happen with this situation now is the general public in Britain have to understand that the power lays with the permanent secretaries, not with the ministers. So when we're thinking about Yvette Cooper and immigration, one way or the other, whether it's illegal or what they're allowing in, which is enormous, and I would submit that it's no longer in the context of immigration as we used to know it, which was 20 to 30,000 a year. We're now talking figures in the millions. It's not that at all. It's something of a far higher magnitude. But the challenging and the scrutiny and the focus has got to go on Antonio Romero, the permanent secretary at the Home Office, not Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper, frankly, Ian, is irrelevant.
It's quite a frightening thought, isn't it?
That's what people have got to understand. The power rests with the civil servants. The ministers can literally just say yes. It's all scripted. So that's what we've got to do. Stop saying Home Office, say Antonio Romero.
Romero's office.
At Romero's office. And let's get to the person who's holding the power, which is her. She's got the policy and the agenda. And as you know, over the years, we've had prime ministers come and go. We've had ministers of one political persuasion or another come and go. They're utterly irrelevant because of the way Tony Blair has set up our administrations to work. The power now lays with the 23-odd permanent secretaries that constitute what's called the board. They are the government.
And that's always the debate, isn't it? If you talk to a minister, they'll say, no, we make the decisions.
That's absolutely not true. In all the years I've lobbied against defence cuts through the Cameron period and through Brexit, and I've liaised with senior military officers on this issue. That from a military portfolio, MOD, the power was flipped from the senior military officers to the permanent secretaries about the time Chief of Defence Staff David Richards come in. Now, he was supposed to hold the end up, and he didn't. He caved in. So the military is no longer run by our senior officers. It's run by the permanent secretary, a guy called David Williams. And his boss
is Ollie Robbins at the FCO, and his boss is Jonathan Powell. Now, your ears should prick up at this
Well,
point.
I was about to say, we know. I mean, you mentioned Ollie Robbins, my ears pricked up there. Then you mentioned Jonathan Powell, and we're going way back in terms of his sort of backroom influence on governments.
Well, he was Tony Blair too, I think.
Correct.
So if you want to talk about national security, I would submit this. What national security is currently an illusion, because their idea of jurisdiction isn't Britain, it's Europe and the world.
Yeah.
They don't see Britain or England or, you know, the United Kingdom. They see it on a much wider level, which is why we don't have borders, which is why there's no border control. But Jonathan Powell's an interesting one. He's refusing to go before Parliament to answer questions. Now, maybe, Ian, you'd like to ask him a question on the Chagos deal, or something to do with border control and Afghan veterans being vetted before they come into the country to make sure that they weren't Taliban. You might want to ask him something serious like that, but at the moment he's refusing to go before Parliament to answer questions. So,
I always thought you couldn't refuse that.
Well, he is, and he's the National Security Advisor.
Yeah.
So have you got some questions for him?
I've got a load of questions for him.
Well, let's do it.
Well,
Let's get a campaign going. Antonia, right, answer this. What are you doing with vetting all these people that you want to let
Permanent secretaries never respond, though, do they? They are always, you're usually, as you know, referred to the Home Secretary, which takes us back to where this conversation began. Curious times. David, got to move. Thank you very much, as ever. David in Exeter. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Lots more to come. We'll talk vaping in just a moment. Josh says it's not just the food crisis. Oh no, I did read Josh's. Apologies. This one from Michael in Norfolk, who says, Ian, this government is very good at diversion politics. No chance of ever being elected again. I mean, that's the curious thing of all of this, isn't it? That we've got a situation where there's some suggestion that this government are adhering to, you know, a very kind of odd, I mean, the word Fabian society has sort of found itself trending. I don't really buy up to the conspiracy of, you know, there's some big agenda that they're all adhering to. I don't think it's that. But I do think they are signed up to an agenda of ineptitude with booster rockets attached to it. But the fact they're going to get voted out in about 3.5 years' time, you might think will play a part in all of this. 0344 499 1000. We'll move on to vaping shortly. And also this. from David in South Wales, who says, I get really annoyed when I hear the hotel protesters saying they are happy with legal immigration, apart from the money aspect, with the illegal immigration. Do they not realise that it is the legal immigration numbers that are really changing the demographics of the UK? Plus, they could be entering the country with forged documents. It's a really good point. And in fact, when we mention legal immigration, that covers a multitude of all sorts of areas, like students, for example. And that's a big area where there is some suggestion that overstaying and things like that are a huge problem. But I get what you're saying, David. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now, e-cigarettes should be banned worldwide to protect kids from irreversible harm, according to some experts. Previous studies suggest vaping can increase the risk of a stroke by a third and asthma and cardiovascular disease by a quarter. But researchers now warn the impact of developing brains and hearts on developing brains and hearts is likely to be even greater. Let's firstly speak to Alberto Gomez Hernandez, Policy Manager at World Vapers Alliance. Alberto, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, sir. Nice to have you with us. So, well, you heard it there. According to the science, according to the medics, you're selling stuff that's going to kill kids, and if not kill them, harm them irreversibly. What's your response to this?
Well, first of all, we don't sell these products. We are a consumer organization who I'm talking on behalf of.
Mm-hmm.
And let me be clear about this. I want to be very clear, and I'm thankful that you asked this question. We do not want kids to vape. Kids should not be vaping because these products are designed to help adult smokers quit. They are not for children.
Sure.
And that's why there are already strict age enforcement rules, but these rules need to be enforced. The problem is they are not being properly enforced in the UK and in many other countries. And that's why we have kids vaping in some places. Still, we are very far from it being a youth vaping epidemic. And the data shows that it's mostly anecdotal and there's no youth or children vaping regularly.
In terms of these kind of headlines, I mean, some people said a few years ago vaping was seen as, rightly or wrongly, almost a completely safe option to smoking. Many perceived it as, well, we might as well all do it because there's nothing in this stuff. You know, it's going to be great. It's moved on. Is the record of the vaping world an improving one in this respect? Does it acknowledge that there are inherent dangers with the product or certain parts of the product?
Well, there are certainly inherent dangers with the products. The statements that you mentioned before from that article saying that vaping can increase the risk of stroke by a third, asthma, cardiovascular disease by a quarter, that might be truth. And those studies often compare vapes or vapors to people who never smoked rather than to smokers. But the reality is that most of adult vapers are current or former smokers as well. And the right comparison is how do the risk of vaping compare to that of smoking? And there the evidence is really clear. Vaping is far less harmful than smoking. It is around 95% less harmful than smoking, according to the United Kingdom Health Security Agency. And that's why smokers should continue to switch to vaping.
But it's still harmful.
Yeah, obviously it is not innocuous. It reduces most of the risks that come with smoking. So basically, vaping allows users to consume nicotine with just a minimal fraction of the risk of smoking. For example, the risk of cancer from vaping is just 0.4% that of smoking. That is really low. Still, it does have some impact on health, but what we are saying is these are products that are designed for smokers to switch to them and consume nicotine in a much safer way. It's not for people who do not consume nicotine or for children.
OK. Listen, on that point, Alberto, it's been great to have you on. Thank you, sir. Alberto Gomez Hernandez, Policy Manager at World Vapers Alliance. Let's speak to Thorin Govind, pharmacist and healthcare expert. Thorin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, yes, we want people to think about how they are accessing vaping and what it means to them, I think is the key part here, because we don't want people to be vaping, but we certainly don't want them to be smoking.
Do you think we'll look back at this in years to come and almost laugh that vaping was suggested as a kind of an alternative or a downgrading in terms of damage? We'll look back at it and go, really? I mean, it's a bit like recommending someone go on to Heineken rather than vodka.
Well, vaping is an effective tool for quitting smoking, and we know that the people tend to like the hand-to-mouth action. So mimicking that by using a vape has some benefits, and people therefore are able to stop smoking. But the concern is that people are doing both, or that they start vaping when they were never going to be smoking in the first place. And we know that some of those products have been targeted at children, and they shouldn't be at all, but we know that it has been happening. And the other aspect of this is globally there's such difference in how regulation occurs when it comes to e-cigarettes and vaping, that also poses a challenge again with any regulator. But we know the MHRA, who are the Medicines Health and Regulatory Agency here, have been looking into this quite consistently. They are tightly regulated, and they are pushing to make sure that people are doing the right thing.
As a pharmacist and somebody who works in healthcare in this respect, Thorin, I mean, what is your overarching view of vaping? Because, you know, there are some people that take it up when they've never previously smoked because they think, well, it's not really harmful. So, and there is a bit of a hit that you get from it, in the same way that if you had a glass of wine, you get a kind of hit. What's your thoughts on that?
I think we have seen that some studies are suggesting that young people who vape are more likely to transition to traditional cigarettes. I want to have an open and honest conversation with patients when they come into the pharmacy, and to explore different options available to them. And it might be that they've never even contemplated quitting vaping or even quitting smoking. So the starting point is to have that conversation and to explain the health benefits of quitting both vaping and smoking, and to really think about where their trigger points are. We know that a lot of people can sometimes socially vape or socially smoke, so making sure that we find out about the habits that are linked to those behaviours. And also, I think people do recognise the cost of these things as well, and are looking at how they can spend their money elsewhere, especially we're still in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Thorin, thank you for your time as well. Good to have you on. Thorin Govin, pharmacist, healthcare expert with us on the programme. Over to you on that one as well. This one in from Margaret. So whilst these 5 officers were dealing with a tweet, they were taken away from their important security duties. What if an attack at the airport had happened while they were dealing with him? Yeah, I mean, you do wonder in terms of just basic priorities. I think of all the stories about free speech. I mean, every time I see one, you know, somebody having their house raided, or whether it's Maxi, the radio producer, who I know a little bit, who's him and his wife had the audacity to comment on a WhatsApp group about school governors, and again, arrested, taken away in handcuffs, arrested for that. The former copper who said something online which I think they thought was anti-Semitic, but actually it was kind of the other way round. I think they misread the tweet, but went round his house, former copper, by his former force. Not just said, mate, you might want to tweet that because you could get in trouble. It wasn't that. I mean, that would be bizarre as well. But a full-on raid, you know, the whole thing. You know, looking at books he had on Brexit and Douglas Murray's greatest hits or whatever. Let's go to Norman in Dartford. Norman, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Going back to the start of the show, Ian, you said about the difference between the Trump administration and the Starmer administration. But it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. The Trump administration believes in what they're doing. Whether you agree with it or not, they believe it.
Correct.
The Starmer administration, not one minister believes in what he's saying. Not one. And they are the worst bunch. It's not coincidence that they're rubbish. It's just they do not believe what they're saying.
But I don't know if they believe... Did they believe anything?
No, well, I think if they told you what they really believe, you'd have kittens.
Yeah.
Because I think Starmer is sort of a Corbynite.
I mean, the trouble with... Yeah, I mean, he was his sort of right-hand man for a bit, wasn't he? And campaigned for him to become Prime Minister, for God's sake.
He was proud to be his friend.
Yeah, we're good mates. He told the world that he should be the PM.
What Starmer is.
Well, I tell you what they are. I think the problem that Labour governments have, a little bit more than maybe Conservative governments, is that they, by definition of being a left-winger, your greatest quality, if that's the right way to look at it, is to oppose, right? To oppose things, to argue against things, particularly the establishment and particularly the status quo. And then you become the government. So you end up going, well, hang on, what am I meant to do here? Because I don't, there's a few things they put in, like their VAT on private schools, which is just a, horrendous tax on kids' education, and, a kind of sort of classism, classic thing. Wouldn't get away with it if it was race, but class, absolutely fine. So they do that, but broadly speaking, I think they're a bit stuck, Norman. I don't think they know how to function when their entire life, from being students up until half an hour ago, was to oppose, argue against, campaign and protest.
Well, that was how they won power.
Yeah.
Because they didn't come up with any real ideas. What they all said was it was all costed and all that.
Yep.
But so people don't listen about what Angela Rayner is about.
Mm.
Now, I was an FOC in the print for over 20 years in the 60s, 70s and some of the 80s. And I could go to every trade union conference in the 70s and they'd come out with the same rhetoric that Angela Rayner does now.
Yeah.
She's only 50 years out of date. and that's a fact. I'm not joking. That's a fact.
I know.
And it's a sad situation.
It's sad, and, unless they're going to learn a very harsh lesson in the next couple of months, it's a lethal one, a lethal situation for Keir Starmer and his party. Norman, got to move. Good man, thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. Now, a reminder, our biggest competition to date is now live, and we're giving you the chance to win a whopping 25,000 quid plus Oasis tickets. I tell you what, that's not a bad day's work. 25,000 quid plus Oasis tickets. 2 lucky winners will win a pair of Oasis tickets when they return to Wembley 27th of September. Plus, alongside that, we're giving one listener the chance to win that huge £25,000. For all the details, how to enter this incredible competition, have a listen to this.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 treble38. All entries must be received by the 19th of September at 9 a.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
I think people are just sick of the whole concept of it, not because we are not, as a nation, pretty generous and wanting to help the world's most oppressed, but because this system has been so systematically abused and exploited that it's lost all credibility.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Bit of breaking news. A former inmate has been jailed for life with a minimum of 45 years after murdering an ex-prison officer in a revenge killing. Elias Morgan, 35, shot father of three Lenny Scott 6 times as he left a gym in Skelmersdale in Lancashire. This is in February 2024. I have to say, it's one of those stories I was not familiar with until we got this breaking news today. That is a substantial and absolutely correct prison sentence. 45-year minimum for Elias Morgan, who shot Lenny Scott 6 times, and he was a father of young kids as well. Appears to be a generally all-round decent chap who lost his life to a piece of filth like this. 45 years in the slammer. Let's go back to your calls. Debbie is in Wigan. Debbie, on vaping, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Enjoying the show.
Thank you.
Thank caller to you, but
welcome along.
not to the network.
Okie doke.
I taught English 11 to 18, and I was never of the mindset that if you had one miscreant in the class, you put the whole class on detention. And it strikes me that if you're going to take this attitude with vaping, then you've got to take it with alcohol, drugs, fast food, phones, anything that can.
That's a very good point. And I mean, particularly with things like, the processed food argument that's around a lot at the moment.
Yeah, because as I say, I smoked for 46 years. I've vaped for 13. I couldn't touch a cigarette now, but I'm 72.
Yeah.
I've done my research, and I just think it's acceptable.
Do you vape? Do you do like strawberry bubble gum?
Oh God,
Bazooka
no.
Jost.
Oh please, Ian. Menthol.
Menthol. Isn't that like smoking polos? I used to say that to mates who smoked menthol cigarettes.
I don't know, it just suits me. I couldn't smoke tobacco. I couldn't use a tobacco liquid now. I mean, it's just nauseating.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's just this blanket. Everything's blanket.
Everything is blanket, yeah. What would you ban, Debbie? What do you think is most dangerous to our lives?
Fast food and processed food.
Yeah, that's probably true.
When you look at the obesity levels in children now, absolutely it is.
It's a good point, yeah. Although I did have a tasty KFC at the weekend. So.
Oh, well, no, I mean, everything in moderation, but for some it's a staple diet because you can't cook, can they? They don't cook anymore.
No, exactly. And eating, mucky stuff from not even the big takeaways, which, I'm not suggesting they're great health places, but I think when it comes to ticking boxes, they probably tick more than some of these strange characters that have got little backstreet alleyway burger bars, but you take the point. Debbie, you've been great. I stop because we come to the end of the programme. Thank you to Debbie in Wigan. One from Josh: Starmer needs to do what is right and step down. The 13th is just around the corner, and he's making things worse by the minute. Rachel Reeves could run a 100-metre sprint. Couldn't run a 100-metre sprint, let alone run the country's finances. Even Gordon Brown was more competent. Yeah, Gordon Brown was definitely a man of detail and competence, but I think absolutely doolally when it came to his politics. But he came from that crew. I was just saying, Peter Cardwell.
Speaking of people who can't run 100 metres.
Marathon expert Peter Cardwell is with us. It's interesting, isn't it? One of the problems I think that Labour face, I was just explaining this a few moments ago. Who are?
They're now called Snickers.
Oh, I do apologise, yes. You couldn't do a 50-metre Snickers. One of the problems Labour face, if you're a left-wing government, of course, your entire kind of inner core, your political DNA is about opposing things.
Yes.
It's about protest. It's about agitation. It's about being angry and annoyed with the status quo or the establishment.
Jeremy Corbyn.
And then you become the leader and the Prime Minister and you're in government. That puts them in a really difficult situation, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And actually, coming from Northern Ireland, I know all about parties of protest who then became parties of government. And guess what? It's a really, really difficult thing. I think that Keir Starmer is far more left-wing than the Blairite government. This is not the Blair government. It's not even the Brown government. And actually, a lot of the policies are pretty left-wing. I think taxes are going to go up in the autumn, in the budget. I think a lot of what happened yesterday was getting ready for the budget, getting all these people like Darren Jones, who was Chief Secretary of the Treasury, into the heart of Number 10. I think that change is all about the budget. So it's interesting to see what Keir Starmer will do, but I don't think it's going to result in taxes going down.
What do you make of, we had an earlier caller, it's often said this about the power of permanent secretaries. So Yvette Cooper gives a speech yesterday. It wasn't a great speech. It was very kind of like spad-written, kind of Oxbridge mindset of a neat and tidy, clear. Indeed, nothing wrong with any of that. But nonetheless, our previous caller was saying, the permanent secretaries are in charge. They make the decisions. The Home Secretary does what the permanent secretary tells them to do.
It really depends.
Because that's been said for years.
It depends on the, I mean, you know, Yes Minister and all the rest of it, it was satirised and that. It depends on the Secretary of State. It depends how they drive things through. Someone like Michael Gove, for example, never listened to anybody. He did what he wanted to do. Well, he listened to people and then he made his own decisions. Margaret Thatcher, the same way. The sort of mindset and maybe even the politics of the civil service with a small p are closer to Labour than they are to the Conservatives. I'm not saying a lot of civil servants aren't impartial, but the difference between the two is smaller, I think.
And if you got a Secretary of State that wasn't that sort of strong a personality, they could easily be moulded into
I've seen it happen.
thinking.
I've seen it happen.
Indeed. Peter Cardwell's here with Drive. What's happening after 4, Peter?
Well, this huge attack on free speech